Hello everybody and welcome to our Monday morning stream. Today we are going to be doing a little bit of a tutorial, kind of like what we did on our last stream where I went through and did a tutorial, hard surface tutorial specifically, on sculpting a clock in ZBrush, mainly using the Z modeler brush, but also a few other hard surface tools. Today we're going to be doing an organic sculpting tutorial and going over some of the processes and different brushes, tools, etc. for how we can create a stylized female face. Much like this, but probably in a little bit more of a different style. I want to try something a little bit different. I don't want to just recreate this head. So, if that sounds like something that you're interested in, stick around, and if the hard surface tutorial sounds like something that you're interested in, that is on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Follygon. But yeah, we're just going to be starting from a sphere, from the very beginning, and going up from there. Let's make sure that we're looking at this from the front view, though. And we want to turn on Make Polymesh 3D so that we can actually sculpt on this, and we can go ahead and get started. Cool. So let me just click on that R button, refresh my menu there. And yeah, I think I'll just go ahead and leave this over up on the side for those that are coming in and joining us and want to see what we're kind of working towards, what we're going to be working on today. But other than that, I'll give a little bit more time for some more people to jump in here, and we can go ahead and get started. Let me make sure that my stream is up on the nets as well. Give a quick little reload over here. And cool. I think we are good to go. I will very quickly just shout out, if you have not checked out my stuff before, or if it's your first time here, there's a link down below to my Gumroad, which has a bunch of stuff on there that I put a ton more work into. There's also some links down there to my socials, and you guys can check all that out. But I would appreciate it if you checked out my Gumroad, and yeah, just Gumroad/Follygon. I think that's the only quick shout out I'll give them. But let's go ahead and jump in. So, I like to just start with spheres, with primitive meshes. You can do this however you want. Another thing that I like to do on occasion is come down into that Initialize palette and either click on that Q sphere, and if you want something a little bit more simple, I'll do this a lot of the time if I'm going to go and do some quick poly modeling. I think just for simplicity's sake, let's just start with this default sphere. It's just this default point sphere is what I call it, and a move brush. And the entire objective of our beginning stages of this process is just to grab a large move brush and focus on large forms, primary shapes. So very simplistic. We'll turn to the side and start kind of pulling out our shape to start getting closer to the shape of our head that we will want moving forward. Now, if you are doing this for your first time, or if you're not familiar with creating these stylized characters or these type of simplistic shapes, definitely grab some reference. I have an image over here. Well, first of all, I have this character that I've sculpted previously on another stream, which is also on my YouTube channel if you guys want to check that out, if you're interested in that entire process. But I also have an image over here by Chadwick Dusenberry on not on ArtStation. I believe he does have an ArtStation, but on Instagram, I believe he didn't create the entire character. I believe Gus Soros created the base. Yeah, it looks like Gus created the base. So definitely go check out Chadwick and Gus on Instagram if you guys are interested in seeing more of their work. But I'm going to be using that as kind of an in-between point. They're a little bit of the same style, different face shapes. I kind of like the tighter, more pointed chin in this one. We got more of a rounded face up here. Plus we got some hair over here, so that helps frame the character as well. JM Guevara, what is going on? How are you doing? And Vidirant, I believe. May there be no Z crashes today. Well, thank you, I appreciate that. But I can almost guarantee that there will be, at least one. We'll see how lucky we can get. But let's continue on here with our sphere and just shaping it up. In these early stages, I like to keep perspective off as I'm looking at the front and side view, as well as the top, just to kind of look at those orthographic views. Again, we're using a large move brush, and if you're having trouble controlling your surface, which is very common in these early stages. You end up getting a lot of these pock marks everywhere. What I recommend doing is either using Dynamesh or ZRemesher to lower the resolution of your geometry. So let's come down into Dynamesh. We'll just use Dynamesh first. I have this down here on my quick bar, so I'll use that after I show you where it is in the menu. But we'll just click that by default and we'll see what kind of resolution we get. We're at 43K, around 43,000 polys. That's way too much, so let's undo that and drop that resolution down to, I don't know, like 8. Let's see what we get out of that. That's more of what we are looking for. Something really low res and something that's really hard for us to kind of go further than the primary form on, which is what we want. We want to make it easy for us, difficult to go further than we need to at this point, easy for us to stay in those lower resolutions. So let's continue using our move brush and just start pushing and pulling some shapes around till we find the head shape that we're looking for. And I like to kind of nudge a little bit, push and pull around at this stage and do something really simple. You don't have to get super complicated here. Again, what we are trying to do is focus on those really simplistic shapes. And there are a variety of different shapes that you can create for your character's head at this point. Again, if you have some reference, which I highly encourage people to always have reference, you'll have a little bit more information about which direction you want to go. But if you don't, I don't know, try to experiment, find a shape that you like, and try to figure out how you could turn that into something a little bit more complex, which we will look at doing here in just a moment. So, if I did not mention at the beginning of the stream, and I see that we actually have some more people in here now, so I will say again, we're going through and doing an organic sculpting tutorial for creating some stylized character heads. In this specific instance, we'll be doing a female character head, and Veterant, thank you for the follow, I appreciate that a lot, man. And then specifically, I will try to show as many of the tools that I use during this process and explain why I'm using them. But if there is something that I go over a little bit too quickly, or if I don't explain it fully and you have some questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. All right, we will continue from here. One thing that I like to do is after I kind of figure out the basic shape for my head, after I've used that move brush extensively, I've kind of pushed and pulled things around, I like to add in a neck. And it doesn't have to be anything complex. The objective, though, is to get more parts and pieces of our character in the scene, in our 3D model, so that we can reference proportions against those different objects. If you end up working on one thing by itself, it often gets very difficult to reference proportions against another object without it being in there. And Guzman 3D, thank you for the follow as well. So let's continue on from here. I'm going to... there's multiple ways to insert more geometry in your scene. Let's go ahead and just click Append for simplicity's sake and append a cylinder 3D. By default, that cylinder will be the default size that ZBrush likes to make everything, which is 2 units cubed. So what I will do is now either use my 3D gizmo or my transpose tool to scale and move that into position. You can use whatever you prefer using. I like to use the transpose line, just because it's something that I've used for a very long time, and now I'm kind of old man ZBrush. I only use this tool. That's not true. I still use the 3D gizmo, but I just like the transpose line a lot. So let's just go ahead and grab our cylinder, start moving it around into position to start creating a very simplistic neck. And I want these two pieces of geometry to be touching, so if you turn on transparency, I can see how that's sticking up into the mesh there. That is what I want for this interaction. And then if you want to scale it, shrink it, whatever you want to do to help get that into a better position from here, you can go ahead and do. And the objective here, again, is to just focus on these really simplistic shapes. To Anor, welcome. Hola, how you doing? The old gods of transpose line, that's right. All right, let's continue on from here. We got our head, we got our neck. I would say with our head, let's go ahead and just shape this up a little bit more. Maybe use our move brush and try to make that a little bit more flat on the sides of the head. And let's just figure out what kind of shape we want here for the front of our face. One thing that I like to do when I'm starting to figure out this main shape for my head is try to focus on getting the roundness of the skull back here. And then for the face, I try to think of the face as kind of a separate object. And for the main portion of the face, I like to get, at least in the beginning, it kind of depends on the character that you're creating, I like to get this triangular silhouette from the profile for the face. And that kind of comes down from the point of the forehead, down to the tip of the nose, down to the chin. And after I get that in place, we can maybe add one subdivision level by pressing Control D, or if you want to up your Dynamesh resolution, we can do that instead. I'm just going to press Control D a couple times for now, and then go through with my pinch brush and start tightening up some of the form around my object. Specifically, I like to start by tightening up this jawline and defining how this is going to transition between these two areas. And then after I get that jawline a little bit more, you can maybe start going through and starting to plane out different parts of your head. I find this to be very useful in these early stages as you're trying to figure out, again, proportions, and it just really helps you keep things clean and a little bit plainer. It feels a little bit hard surfacey kind of during these stages, but it is very helpful. If you've ever sculpted a planar head, I'm sure you would understand why it's very helpful. If not, give it a shot, and I'm sure you'll see why it can be. Let's use our trim dynamic brush down here to plane out some of that chin so that we can start cleaning up this little edge down here for our jawline. And then what I'll do is use my move brush a few more times. We're going to be swapping back and forth between a ton of different brushes. Or not a ton of different brushes. I shouldn't say a ton. Really, let's see, what have we used? 1, 2, 3, 4. We've used 4 different brushes. That's pretty much all we're going to use. But I will be swapping between those 4 different brushes pretty quickly. And again, if I do anything too quick, just let me know. If you are using the pinch brush and you hold the Alt key, it will do a pinch in on the mesh. So you can use this to create a little bit of a tighter separation between that area. And then of course the Shift key is your smooth brush, but you want to be a little careful with that because it's a little destructive. It's very strong. All right. Let's continue on from here. Let's go ahead and up-res our Dynamesh resolution because things are starting to get a little bit tough to work with. The geometry is starting to pinch down here from me, obviously using my pinch brush, and in certain areas the geometry just isn't super clean and easy to work with. So let's maybe try like a 56 or so, and I'll just control click and drag to re-Dynamesh that. That looks pretty good, maybe even a little bit higher res. So let's go for like the default, which is I think like 128, which, yeah, we'll go a little bit lower, that's fine. Doesn't need to be exact. All right, so let's just continue on pinching out some of the geometry here, getting some of the plane breaks using the smooth brush to transition some of that and get it nice and clean. And we'll just define our jawline a little bit more. And maybe use our trim dynamic brush back here on the skull where it's starting to get a little squared off, and we can try to round out some of that shape. All right, so from here, we're looking at a specific reference. This is probably when I would want to start getting a little bit closer to some of the shapes that I'm seeing. Again, I'm using the reference up in the top left corner, which is just a sculpt by me, and this character by Chadwick Dusenberry. Or Dusenberry, I'm not sure. I'm terrible at pronouncing names, so I'll do the best that I can. So let's taper in our jaw and use our clay tubes brush, one of my favorite brushes, to start adding some more volume to our cheeks. Starting to round that out. In general, around your face, typically the area underneath the eye and down and around the jaw, this tends to be a very difficult area to get the proper forms on stylized characters, just because all this stuff ends up working together with the eyes, with the nose, with the jawline, and all that feeds into the lips and nose and everything. It's all connected, so we want to take our time with this and make sure that we're not jumping ahead too quickly on everything. And then for our neck, I probably want to make this neck a little bit more thin. So let's scale that boy down. We'll probably add some angle to this eventually. I think for now I'll just kind of keep it straight, keep it a cylinder, and we'll continue on from here. Let's just look at maybe a quick few proportions, maybe squash this down, make the face a little bit more round, and maybe pull in a little bit here where some of that's getting a little bit too exaggerated out here. All right, now that we've got the basic shape of our head, this will change over time. We will start making more large-scale proportional changes after we start doing the nose, eyes, lips, etc. But during the beginning of this, you want to make sure that you have a good base that you can work from. After you start getting some of those other parts, you'll realize where there are more mistakes that you need to fiddle with and correct from there. So let's go ahead and start doing our face next. What I like to do when starting out on my face is just figure out where that nose is going to be and where my brow line is going to be. I just kind of sketch this in with my clay tubes brush and start creating some of the transitional areas where things like my eyes will exist. Again, you want to work on all this at the same time. Just kind of sketch it in pretty rough. Brow, nose, eye socket down here, coming down and around to the lips. And all this will eventually start to feed into the wrap that we get from the cheekbone, from the corner of the mouth up to these rounded shapes that we often see, these nice appealing rounded shapes that we often see in our stylized characters. So, for example, coming up and around, I'll just do a quick pinch up and around this way just to exaggerate that so that you can see where this flow is taking us that we want to kind of keep an eye on. And that's not the same as every single character that you're ever going to create, but just for this, in the beginning stages, that's one of the shapes that I like to look for and keep an eye out on. All right, and let's get some more depth in our eyes in stylized characters in the style that we're aiming for, at least. This tends to be something that I see get made a little bit more flat than we would like. I like to see those corners of the eyes come back quite a bit. If you can find some references for the style that you're aiming for that show a little bit more of the profile view of your face, I think it'll make a little bit more sense and help you out with figuring out that area. Let me turn off the lazy mouse there. Again, we're just using Dynamesh, so if you get to a point where geometry is getting really stretched, you can just control, click, and drag, re-Dynamesh. You could even up-res your geometry, whoa, way too high, a little bit if things are getting a little bit too res for you. But we do want to also keep in mind that the only resolution we want to work on is the lowest possible resolution that we can create the shape that we need at. So if we end up going too high too quick, you'll end up screwing up a lot of stuff and taking a lot of extra time to correct that later on. Let's just sit here with our move brush, move and adjust some different proportions. Now that we've started to carve in a lot of this information, we can start to see where some of these changes we might want to make are. As well as like up around the jawline here, which I can sketch back in with my pinch brush. And try to get that angle there. We'll just keep this really rough. It's a little kind of pull in there. It starts to get really stretched. Just Dynamesh again. And I'm kind of liking how tight that's getting. Let's kind of plane out some stuff here along the jawline. Make sure we're looking at things from the 3/4 view. At this stage, this is probably when I would start to toggle on and off perspective while I'm working. I recommend not sculpting with perspective off all the time. I also recommend not sculpting with perspective on all the time, especially when you're looking at orthographics. If you have perspective on, it can warp stuff and make it a little bit more difficult for you to figure out your silhouette. So definitely keep that in mind as you are working as well. All right, let's continue on here and maybe use some more pinch brush. Let's get some more roundness to these eyes. I want to make these eyes pretty large, I think. And let's carve in a little bit under the nose here so we can get an actual plane break in here. Maybe pull that out a little bit with our move brush. And for the mouth, for the lips during this stage, I recommend just kind of keeping this pretty simple. Focus more so on the silhouette of your mouth during this stage and the roundness of the shape that you are getting here flowing up and around your face. I'm going to try to really focus on that in these early stages. You don't have to pinch it super tightly, kind of like what I'm doing, but that helps me just kind of visually understand what's happening with my surface. In terms of the jawline, I don't typically see kind of these super rounded jaws like what we had just a second ago, so I'm trying to get that to be a little bit more straight, looking at that back view. And this back corner of your jaw is typically tucked in a lot further than what you would think for a stylized character. Sometimes you will see this kind of large jaw shape from the back side, but that back corner still should be tucked in enough that when you're looking at your character's face from the front view, you cannot see that back point. What I often see is a scenario where it's sticking out so far that from the front view, and I know this is a little exaggerated, right? But it ends up breaking that rounded, nice, clean silhouette that we would normally get if we tucked that in. So I want this part of the cheek to be further out in the x-axis, I guess, than that back corner. Unless the concept that you're working from specifically has like this really strong cut jawline. I just want to see how you deal with this shit stage. The early stages are definitely, in my opinion, the most difficult part. Not for any other reason than it's not like technically difficult for what you have to do with the tools and stuff, but it is just mentally difficult. You have to understand a lot about what you're trying to create, and everything looks bad in these early stages sculpturally. It's just kind of how it works. If you're working in traditional clay, it's often, in this stage even longer, even worse for a longer amount of time. So take your time in these stages. Don't try to rush out of them. The longer you can kind of play in the mud, as I like to say, the better all that stuff later on will be. Let's add in just a quick subdiv, kind of like pinch in, pull around some of these shapes, and make sure just from our side that we're getting a nice kind of planar wrap here. And because this is a female character, typically we don't want that nose to be quite such a strong feature. I had that bridge out really far. I just kind of pulled that out initially so that we could get the separation. But now I'm going to pull that back a little bit and start to clean this up, as well as the just transitional shapes that, ooh, we're getting a little too stretchy, aren't we? As well as just the transitional shapes that we see around here. And I'll just use my pinch brush, kind of pull in around the brow here, wrap around, and the separation here that I built up, it's creating like this really hard transition right there. That looks pretty dumb, so we probably want to trim that out or add in some more volume on top of the forehead. Whoa, not what we wanted. So I like to use that trim dynamic brush if I'm trying to push down on some geometry, kind of plane it back out. Or I like to use the clay tubes to add form if I'm doing something like that. Try out both. They work really well in combination with each other. And starting to look a little bit more clean, for sure. Let's go ahead and we got perspective off, so that makes this easier to do. Run a mask up through here. I like to use the mask lasso brush. By default, you will be using the mask pen, but if you hold the control key, come up here and click, there are a bunch of different options. Again, I like to use that mask lasso. So I'm going to create a quick mask so that I can use my move brush and pull in along my eyes and just get a little bit more depth in here. It feels a little bit too shallow for me right now. And we'll just kind of continue to clean up here. Some smoothing, some more dynameshing, and maybe some more kind of planing out. If you're not familiar with the lazy mouse tool, that is in your stroke menu, which I have docked over here on my left side. Under lazy mouse, you can turn this on with any brush, and these are the settings that I use on my pinch brush, so you can copy those if you want to try to get something similar to mine. You will have to lower your brush Z intensity quite a bit because of the step count being so low. It'll make the brush a lot stronger. So if you copy that, just make sure you turn down the Z intensity. And then you can use that to get a little bit of a cleaner stroke up through specific areas. I'll go ahead and close that. All right, let's continue looking at our silhouette. Cleaning up some different areas, doing some more pinching and pulling around with our move brush. Just spend some time cleaning some of this. Let's look at our jawline here. A little bit uneven down here, so let's get some trim going on. I'm just going to do a quick few pinches along here to kind of plane out the geometry. Get a nice kind of planar section here. And, whoops. That'll be good for now. Something like that. And you can see how this is starting to shape up and get a little bit closer to that final shape. Again, these early stages are so very important to take your time in. And, you know, it can be really tough in these early stages. I've been there. I've been there. It is the verdant, or what, veterant, like they said, the kind of shit stages. It's a tough stage to get through, but really taking your time, keep things clean, controlled. It's definitely worth it. Much like you, what's the saying? You can't polish a turd. It's kind of like that. If you jump ahead too fast, you can't really fix a lot of that underlying broken form unless you do that in the beginning. There are ways to do it, it just makes it a lot more difficult. Let me see here. I think I want to move my jawline more forward and probably mess with the shape of my head a little bit more. Let's turn on perspective for a little bit. And let's see. I'm just gonna pull out around these cheeks a little bit more. Just want a little bit more volume around here. Again, I know we have this, you know, super tight pinch, but we will be eventually smoothing that back out. And let's fill in some of this because it's starting to like dip in through here if we look at that silhouette. Another thing that I'll recommend doing, I talk about this on my stream a lot, but look at your sculpt from extreme angles. So a little divot right there, not sure what that is, but top down, bottom up, you know, 3/4 angles, all these different angles are going to help you understand your form a little bit more. Don't just be looking at the front and side and back, etc. Try to rotate around as much as you can. Alright, a little bit more fill in there, and I think we'll move on to the next step. See what we need here next. In the eye socket, it's a little bit messy. Just the form is kind of all over the place. So I'm going to try cleaning this up with my pinch brush. Again, holding that Alt key, I can pinch in and pull that around. Get this really nice, tight, flowing line. But when I do that, it ends up messing up the surface here. And that's just kind of a result of how the pinch brush area of effect works. So I will be working on fixing this area of the, like underneath the eyelid and cheek more and more as I start to get in the rest of the parts and pieces in here for the eyes. But it's good to just do, you know, a little bit of cleanup in here to keep that under control so you know what's happening there with your surface. It's really easy to let stuff get out of hand. I recommend if you notice something that's kind of bothering you, try to take care of it as quick as you can. Even if it's something, you know, quick and small. spend a couple minutes on it, and it will save you some headaches later on. Alright. Other than that, I think we could probably start inserting some eyeballs and some lids, and maybe work on a nose a little bit more and some of these other shapes. There's still definitely some dirtiness going on with our surface here, but we can clean that up after a little bit. Let's see. To Veterant, that's when he puts in the facial features, and then have to go, I'm gonna fix that. I know how that looks. I'm gonna fix that too. Yeah, you're constantly jumping around. One thing that I try to do when I'm sculpting is spend about, and this isn't an exact amount of time, but I try to spend about 15 or so minutes in a specific area and then jump around to another area, like a maximum of 15 minutes. Not always, it's not a specific number, right? But I try to spend a little bit of time in one area and then jump around to another, because what that does for me is it helps to essentially keep me from working in one area far too long and then end up, hey, we have these really nice finished eyes that we sculpted and they look great, except we forgot to do the mouth and nose and all this stuff. So it's like, yeah, we got these really finished eyes, but we forgot to spend more time on the eyes and lips and nose and everything else. So just to kind of keep everything at that same level of finish, I recommend try to jump around as often as you can. Don't get caught in one place for far too long. Other than that, other than like some nudging and pushing and pulling around, kind of planing out the nose a little bit right now so that we can start getting a nose shape instead of just a ball. I think we can go ahead and, ooh, you know what? Let's drop some very simplistic ears on here. I have an ear brush on my Gumroad. Ooh, you know what? Maybe I haven't uploaded it. I lied. No, I do have it. I didn't lie, I promise. In my Follygon brushes on my Gumroad, you can get this insert ear brush. It is a very simple piece of geometry, but there are two different ears. I will show you here in just a moment. Let's duplicate our head. Make sure we delete subdivision levels. And I'm going to press on the B key, I for insert. Oh, nope, where are we? We want B, insert ear, there it is. Hold on just a moment. For some reason I have Do Not Disturb turned on, yet my phone is still ringing. We'll go airplane mode. Alright. So the ears. The reason we duplicated the geometry is because we want something that we can insert our ears directly onto. Again, I found my insert ear brush. This is something that I have custom created, but I will show you how you can create some ears much like this. A shelf should pop up if you have the default UI. If you don't, I have a realistic ear and a tune ear brush in here, so if you want a more realistic ear, you don't feel like spending the time to sculpt ears, or if you just want a base to work off of, you can insert that. Whoops, I'm going to insert the tune ear piece of geometry there. We got a tiny one there, we don't want that though. So I will click and drag that onto my mesh. And then from here, I'm gonna press Shift F so that I can see the polyframe data of my geometry. And I want just the ears, which are purple here, so I will Control Shift click my ear. And then I will go down into Tool, Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. And that will delete the head that I inserted those on. You could also insert those on the base head and then split them off separately. This is just the way that I like to do it. And then I will move those into place and work on the scale and proportions of those from here. Very simplistic piece of geometry. I just poly modeled these in ZBrush just so you guys can see what it looks like. It's essentially just a cube that I pressed in on the ears there. You could also model this out of a sphere. I often do that. It just kind of depends what kind of mood I'm in. But let's go ahead and scale up our ears and move them right behind our jawline and start getting those in place. The ear typically, even on stylized characters, because they somewhat mirror realism, they got a little bit of an angle back, follows the angle of that jawline typically. I'm also noticing from my front view that my head is sticking out quite a bit back behind that jawline. So let's do a mask. And let's just actually use our move brush and pull in on that back area there. It feels like it's sticking out a little bit too far for what we want. And then if we want to push that in even a bit more, we can maybe trim that up with a trim dynamic or H-polish, whatever you like using. Let's kind of trim that back a little bit more here. And it still feels like it's sticking out quite a bit, so let me trim this in. Pretty fur. Pretty fur. Alright, and I think I'm going to pull out on my cheek and in on the corner of my eye. Just a little bit here. Nice little transition there. And then from the top view, what I'll do is move my light source, which is up here in your light menu. You can just click and drag on this sphere and move your light wherever you want. I have it down here in my UI, just for convenience. And then from here, it just helps you to be able to see what's going on with your geometry a little bit better. So let me work on just planing that out a little bit more, squashing that in, just to make sure that that's looking all right from the front view. Can turn on perspective, and that's when you might start noticing, hey, I maybe did some weird stuff here when I was working in orthographic view. So if you are making a lot of changes without perspective on, make sure you're toggling that on from time to time to see what's going on. All right, and then I need to move in my ears because I've moved my geometry out. So let's make sure that those are at least touching the surface there. And then proportionally for our ears, I think they're probably a decent size right now. If you're working on something that's more realistic, typically you want your eyes to fit within around the eye to the nose within that range. There's a lot of variety for ears, especially based on the age of the character or age of the person, if you're going for more realism. For stylized characters, I typically see, and I like to put my ears a little bit higher up than in line with the bottom of the nose. Typically like maybe the corner of the nose or even a little bit higher like what I have here. We'll just leave them here for now, and if we want to make more changes later, we can do that. Let's see. All right, our head is really shaping up now, starting to get really clean. Starting to define some of these planes a little bit more. We got our ears in. Before we put in our eyes, what I would like to do is put in a very simplistic body or shoulder area, just so that we have a kind of blend here for the neck, so it's not just kind of sitting there floating off by itself. So to do that, I will press duplicate on my cylinder and select my Insert Multi-Mesh Primitive Brush, which is just BIMM Primitive Brush, and then from there I'm going to insert a sphere. There are a bunch of different spheres that you can choose, just the insert sphere should be fine, and I will click and drag that where I need it, and then I will do the same thing before where I deleted hidden on the geometry. And then from here, just to kind of shape up the form very quickly, we don't need to spend a lot of time on the body. That's definitely not our focus. So if you just want to put something really simple in there, like what I've done, just kind of a tapered, I don't even know, tapered sphere. I just kind of pulled down on it a little bit with the move brush. Nothing crazy, nothing super complicated, but if we want to work on that body a little bit more later, we have the option to do that. So from here, let's go ahead and insert maybe some eyes in there, if anything, real quick. Scale down on the neck because it feels a little bit thick for this style of character. And yeah, let's grab some eyeballs. Cool. So we'll go on back up to our head. And for the eye, I like to use a specific sphere. There are multiple types of spheres. The one I like to use is if we append a sphere 3D, we will get a sphere with a vertice at the top of it. If your sphere does not have a vertex at the top of it, make sure you find one that does. The default, just primitive sphere should have one. The reason you want to use this is because it makes it easier to paint your eyes and make some different selections, which we will show off a little bit later. But now that we have our eye, I'm just going to move it up in the chain so it's right under my head. I'm going to turn off symmetry and scale that down. Let's turn on transparency. And I'll just scale that down. And then I'm going to rotate the sphere, holding the shift key so that I can get it to snap to the 90-degree angle and get that point facing where I need it. All right, scale that down a little bit more and figure out where we want this eye to live. Stylized characters, much like what we're creating right now, often have very large eyes. A lot larger than what it even appears on the surface. For another example, let me see if we can turn on transparency here, just so you can see how large these eyes actually are inside of the head. The reason these eyes are typically so large on these styles of characters is because you're trying to make it not only fit that large style on the surface, but if you want to use a round eye to get that to work, it often has to be even larger underneath everything, especially if you're trying to get that nice eye wrap and everything else around the corner and the inside corner as well. But yes, we will look at that more as we kind of continue on here. I am thinking that our eye is actually going to have to be a bit larger. I'll just scale that up and slide that out a little bit. Zion H, thank you for the follow and welcome to the stream. How are you doing? And what's great about inserting all this geometry and taking all these steps, much like with when we inserted the ear, when you insert the eye, I'm starting to see that that inner corner could probably be pushed in on the face a little bit more. We're not getting enough depth over there. So to do that, I'm going to use my move brush, but I'm going to be using a feature called AccuCurve, which lets you pull out or in a very sharp point. To turn that on, go into your brush menu and go under Curve, AccuCurve, and toggle that on for your move brush. Then on that inner corner of the eye, I can start pulling in and starting to get some nicer depth there. So I'll just probably exaggerate that a little bit at this stage. Totally fine to do that. I think maybe even a bit more. It's starting to shape up nice though. I'll just toggle that off. I have this in my quick pop-up menu. If you guys want to create a menu like this, there is a tutorial on my YouTube channel. But essentially you just come up here into your preferences for a quick 5-second tutorial. You can create a custom UI and click on that create new menu button. But to do that first, you have to go into your config and enable customize. Then you'll be able to create a new UI for yourself, a new menu. And then what you can do is hold Control and Alt and click anything in ZBrush, even a menu, and ZBrush will say, hey, assign a custom hotkey to this. You press your hotkey, and then whenever you press that hotkey, your menu will pop up for you. All right, let's continue on here with some more pinching and pulling around. And we will really start to clean up this surface here in a little bit. But let's get a little bit more volume here. And I want to look at this really extreme angle. Make sure that I'm getting some good wrap around this area. I'm going to use my move brush without AccuCurve. I'm just kind of pulling here a little bit. Make sure that this is reading well, again, from these really extreme angles. And just take care of anything that really stands out to me right now. Grab that clay tubes brush again. Just sketch in here a little bit more. And probably a little bit too far out here as well. And it's okay if this is a little bit messy. We will look at how we can clean up our geometry in just a moment. If you're having trouble getting some of these nice clean forms, and your geometry is more kind of looking like it is back here with all these kind of pock marks and just brush strokes and everything else, there is a pretty easy way that we can start cleaning that up. And we can do that in just a second. Let's move that up just a little bit more. I do like the shape that we have up here, but I think our brow is a little bit too heavy. So what I'm going to do is mask this off. Just control click on my surface to soften that mask. Let's move that down even a little bit more. Whoops, there we go. And then use the large move brush and just kind of pull in here along that brow, just because it's sticking out so very far. All right, so from here, let's go ahead and clean up our geometry and make it a little bit just easier to work with in general. To do this, we are going to be using ZRemesher and Projection Master, or actually not Projection Master, just Projection. Projection Master is something different. All right, if you are familiar with this, then it should be nothing new to you, but if not, we'll do a quick little tutorial on how to use Projection and cleaning up your mesh with ZRemesher. What is going on, Engine X? How you doing, man? Welcome back. It has been a minute. How hast thou been? Something, I don't know. All right. Let us go ahead and hold Shift, click. That'll solo everything except for our head. Oh, you know what? Actually, let's merge our neck down before we go any further. This will make this process a little bit easier. So our neck, right, you know what? We'll just, let's do this really quick and then we'll worry about the neck later. I'll take that back. So shift click, that'll hide everything except for your selected mesh. Just click it again or click the eyeball icon. That'll turn that to be active. Duplicate your head. And then from there, we are going to activate ZRemesher. And it'll depend on how complex your form is, what resolution you want to aim for. Our mesh is very simple, so we could do a target poly count of 1, which is about 1K. Let's open up the ZRemesh menu. Or we could go even a little bit lower. Let's try 0.5. So that should be around 500 polys on one side of the geometry. It will do one side because we have symmetry turned on, and then it will mirror it over to the other side. So this will be closer to about 1 to 1.5K polys, which is plenty for something like this. Click on ZRemesh, let that do its thing. And then we will go ahead and come back up here. Now we have two pieces of geometry. They should be laid on top of each other, much like what we're looking at right now. I recommend using the solo mode so that you can kind of toggle between these two and take a look, see what's going on here. Shift F polyframe. I think that is looking pretty good for retaining our form. So even with solo mode, you can still project. Projection only affects the things that are visible, and because these are technically still visible, whatever has the eyeball icon, let's say, even though we have solo mode on, it will still work. So I'm going to press Control D to subdivide, go to project, project all, Control D to subdivide, project all, Control D to subdivide, project all. And you can do this as many times as your computer can handle. For me, we'll say I'll do one more subdivision and I'm not even going to project because we got pretty much all the form in there. Now that we've projected all that form onto there, I can delete the piece of geometry that I had before. So here's the Dynamesh geometry. And here is our new topology that is a little bit more clean and has some subdivision levels that we can step up and down through. So I will delete the old one. I will turn everything back on. And now I can step up and down through my subdivision levels. And the reason why this makes it so much easier to clean is because when you're working on something low res, K. Von Lanton, thank you for the follow, and welcome to the stream. Engine, you were lost in space, but you came back. Well, I'm glad you're back, man. So if you go down to a lower res subdiv, when you work on that, it's a lot easier to control your mesh. So I'm just using a light smooth here on some of this, even some pinch or some trim. You definitely have to have control over your geometry still to be able to clean up your geometry, right? But it just makes it a little bit easier to work on something low res. So I will spend some time to clean this up, stepping up and down through some subdivs, and just get something a little bit more clean to work on from here on out. And I'm going to pull in on the shape of my jaw a little bit just to get this a little bit tighter. Get more of that sharp look there. And maybe just add a little bit more form here. And slowly start to smooth out that tight crease that I had along my face. Whoops. And while I'm doing this, I'm also, adding in a little extra form here and there to help fill in some of the areas where maybe it's not quite as round as I would like it to be. Needs a little bit more volume in some of these areas. So we'll just kind of fill that in. Still the same brushes that we've been using, nothing really new here, just a matter of taking your time to smooth and clean out some of this geometry. And from here we can go ahead and get some of our eyelids in and even duplicate our eye over to the other side since we've had One Eye Sally here for a while. Let's see. Make sure that we don't want to make any additional changes before moving forward. Maybe just a little bit more cleanup back here. And some more shape change to the area around my eye. I'm going to go for more of a rounded eye here. That kind of involves using my move brush and pushing and pulling some of the surface around a little bit. So just trying to create more of a rounded shape, as well as the corner of the eye, which is not really a corner right now, it's just kind of where that eye is hitting that surface. I'm just pulling that down a little bit so that I can make these eyes feel even larger. I know, crazy. Even larger eyes, right? It's exactly what this needs. Alright, to mirror our eyeball over to the other side, there's a lot of different ways to do this. The way that I'm going to do it, though, is use deformation mirror, then I'll put it on the other side, and then use modify topology mirror and weld. Mirror and weld works from the positive to the negative axis, which is why we had to use the deformation mirror first. And then X to turn on our symmetry, and now we can work on both of these eyes at the same time. Oh boy. We do want to make sure that they're not touching in the middle. That's very important. Because if that happens when we go to work on them symmetrically later, it's going to cause a ton of issues, and that's no fun. The big brush, what's going on? We are working on creating a stylized character face, a stylized female face, a little bit of a tutorial on it, and some of the processes that we take to clean up our geometry, start simple, and get a little bit more complex on top of that. But if you are just now joining us, or if anybody else is just now joining us, no worries, everything gets uploaded to my YouTube channel, which is linked below. So if you guys want to catch up on some of the additional info later on, it will be uploaded there after I am done streaming here today. You can follow along. I'm trying to explain as much as I can, but for those that are new, if there is something that I gloss over a little bit too quick, or if you're joining us a little bit late, feel free to ask questions or ask me to clarify on anything, and I will do just that. Alright, I'm just using my move brush really big, making some proportional changes, finding some areas that I would like to quickly fix. Alright, so eyelids. Eyelids are so much fun to do, and by so much fun I mean a lot of people struggle with them. So I will try to show a quick and easy way to do that. Do we like where our eyes are? Very quickly. If anything, my eye is a little bit lower than I would want it with this part here. We will work on the eye shape more once we get the eyelids in there. So let's do that next. Alright, so select your eyeballs, press duplicate. So we want something that we can work on. I'm just going to work on one side at a time just to make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to use my Cube Tube Snap Brush. This is also available on my Gumroad, but you can do this with some other brushes as well. This is under my curve brushes, which you can get for $1. Or you can use the Curve Tube Snap Brush, which is a brush that exists in ZBrush by default. I'm going to use my Cube Tube brush though. How we're going to use this is I'm just going to click and drag a basic eyelid shape here and continue that line. And voila, we have our basic eyelid already started. If we want to shape this up a little bit more, we could make a few changes, but honestly, I think that's probably good. So we'll just click on our mesh to delete the curve, and then I will select the eyeball and delete the eyeball, delete hidden. All right, Control W, I'm just pressing that a couple times just to polygroup my geometry here. From here, the geometry is a little bit more complex than what I would like, so I'm going to use my Z Modeler brush to delete some edge loops. Essentially what you do is just hover over an edge loop, hold the spacebar, and click on Delete, Edge Loop Complete. And then I'm going to delete that edge loop, that edge loop, that edge loop, is that one, and that one. About every other edge loop here. And then we will use the Z Modeler brush again, hover over an edge, hold the spacebar, select Crease, Edge Loop Complete, and I'm going to crease the sides of this geometry. So that when I smooth this with the D key, just to show the dynamic subdivision level, it's the same shortcut for adding and or for stepping up and down through subdivision levels. So D and Shift D to do that. Just so I can reviz on what that's looking like. And then I can use a large move brush or any other combination of brushes to start shaping up my eyelids. Now I talk about eyelids all the time on my stream, just because eyes are so tough to do. And it's something that I know people have a lot of questions about. So I will try to cover some of that today as well. You should try to do something like that so you have a base every time you want to do something. Yeah, I have a couple base meshes on my Gumroad. That's what this is. This is a base mesh here that I have on my Gumroad, which is pretty nice. I enjoy using this for certain projects just to have a starting point that saves you, hours of work that you don't really need to do if you've done it before. But if you are doing a personal project, a lot of the time I recommend to people just get the extra practice and start from scratch. I think your end result will be better for it, and your future projects will be better for it, just because you're doing, more and more work. Before I fix that eyelid, 1 second here. So what we're going to do from here is I'm going to use my mask lasso to mask the top edge of these points. And use the move brush to slide this back a little bit. And I'm doing this just so that I can get a better angle on my eyelid here. Typically you want the angle of this plane here pointing towards the center, or about the center of your eyeball. It's kind of a good rule of thumb to aim for. Make sure that that is covering everything up here, and then we can move and reshape this from here if we want to make more changes. So nothing too complicated here, literally just my move brush and some masking, which we have already looked at. And then if we want to mirror that over to the other side, we can just do that really fast. And now we can continue doing our bottom eyelid. Now I could redraw out the bottom eyelid, but that sounds like a lot of work, so let's just duplicate what we already have and rotate it around 90 degrees or so. I'll swap that over to the other side just because it fits a little bit better. And then I'll start shaping up this bottom lid to fit down here. Whoops. A little bit on the thin side, so let's grab our inner edge here. Now the whole purpose of doing this is so that I can, kind of go through a little bit step by step and explain as much of the process and tools as I can. Hopefully this has been helpful for you guys so far. I do believe that we probably won't get this to a super finished level today, just because we're going slow and I'm trying to describe as many of those parts and pieces of the process as possible. But I will try to do as much as we can, and then maybe we can pick this up on another stream in the future. Maybe tomorrow we can work on this a little bit more, depending on how far we get today. Let me take that boy off because it's getting a little cozy in here. And we will continue on. Tuinor, welcome back. If you're cool with answering, I was wondering if you find having a selection of tools for sale on Gumroad is a decent supplemental income, or is it too inconsistent to count on? It absolutely depends on how good the product is and how many people are buying it. I mean, it just absolutely depends on a lot of factors. I mean, your thing could sell like wildfire, or nobody could buy it. It just kind of depends, man. How do you deal with the same face syndrome when doing stylized stuff? Don't make the same face. That's how I deal with it. Practice a lot. Practice a lot more. I don't really suffer from same face syndrome because I do a variety of stuff in different styles. By the way, if you guys haven't seen the finished render for my Android 17 character, concept art, original art by GopGap. Click. So there's the original. There's my 3D boy. I think he turned out pretty well. I like him a lot. I had a lot of fun working on this. Go give GopGap a follow if you have not already. But in terms of same face syndrome, I tend to work on, I would also say, before I say what I was about to say there, stylized is not just one thing. If you have a specific style for yourself and it is, quote, stylized, stylized just means, not realistic, right? But if you have a specific style for yourself, maybe try to switch it up and try something in a little bit of a different style so that you can kind of break the habit and get away from something. Or try creating it in a different way. The reason I don't feel like I suffer from same face syndrome too much is because I'm trying to create a lot of different things in a lot of different styles, right? Stylized just is kind of a blanket term that covers a lot. But hopefully that answers your question. I think the short answer is also just You know, make a crap ton of stuff and practice as much as you can, and you will get out of some of those habits that you have built for yourself. Other than that, just time and practice. That's the answer to everything. It really is. It really is. The leg warmers make the character. Thanks, Zofo. Cool 17, I think I have like a stylized style too. You think you have a stylized style? Stylized style, that's a mouthful. I tend to make a lot of stuff somewhere between Disney and Nintendo. I really like those stylistic appeals, and that's just kind of what I aim for a lot in the work that I'm trying to create. I professionally, you know, translate stuff from 2D to 3D. That's like for physical production, if you guys are unfamiliar with my work. But in my excuse me, in my personal work, I try to find concepts that I really love, like that Gop Gap concept. Or I did something from Bambi. I did The Great Prince of the Forest a couple months ago. So I try to find stuff that I like, and then I try to work on translating that to 3D as best as I can, while also trying to hang out and, you know, answer some questions here while streaming, all that good stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Try to do maybe something a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Maybe that'll kind of break some of those habits. Alright, let's get a little bit more roundness. Now that we actually have our two eyelids in here, we can work on their shape quite a bit more. I really want the corner of this eye to be even lower. So what I'm going to do is grab that scale here on this eyeball. Whoops, let's turn on local symmetry so this scales properly. I'm going to scale that eye up and slide it back a little bit. Maybe out. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want this corner to be even lower down here, and to kind of facilitate that change, making the eyeball a bit larger should help in that. Let's go a little bit smaller here. I'm going to scale from that back corner again, and just move it down a little bit. Now, eyes are really tough. They're something that you're probably going to spend a lot of time on for your character. So don't, you know, much like I've said with everything else, try not to rush ahead on them. Really spend your time, or take your time, making them look good. And it will save you some of those nasty headaches later on. Let's move this edge down. Make sure that we're getting some nice wrap there. Ooh, that is way too far out. I'm going to insert an edge loop in here with my Z modeler brush. Hover over a face, insert poly loop, poly loop. And then I'm just going to pull out here. This will just make it a little bit easier to control the transition here. Alright, so you can spend a long time working on these eyes, but I want to jump around to something else. Much like I said earlier when I said we want to jump around as much as we can and try not to spend a long time finishing our eyes and then not focusing on, you know, some other stuff. So let's do that next. Maybe work on our nose, our lips a little bit, since those don't even exist. Let's do the nose next. Any tips for retopology? Says JM Guevara. No tips. Do it well. Do it clean. Depending on what you're working for. I don't do a lot of manual retopo for animation just because my stuff is for physical production. So in terms of retopo, depending on what you're aiming for, if you're doing something for real time, something that needs to be animated, just do it clean, do it well. Faces have pretty much been figured out at this point. There are tons of free tutorials online that you can look up for what you need to aim for. Alright, let's do this nose a little bit more. And put in some nostrils. Pinch brush. Make sure we're getting a clean separation there. And you can either mask off a little area with your mask pen, or you can use like a standard brush. You know, whatever works for you. It's all the same. You always end up with the same result, just kind of depends on how you tackle it. There's always a million ways to do everything, right? It's just about finding what works for you. Alright, so we got our tiny little nose here. I don't want this to be too much of a main feature. I want to, let's start shaping this up a little bit better. And I think I want to get a little bit more mousy here. So let's pinch in and get a little bit of a stronger translation. I think I'm gonna make this a lot more thin. So let me mask this off. Whoops, mask lasso, that's what I wanted. I'm just gonna follow that edge. We can soften that form a little bit. And just use our move brush. I'm just gonna pull in here quite a bit. And I know we're breaking a few things, but that's okay. You gotta break stuff to start fixing it. So a little bit of form change so that the nose is a lot less of a feature. Typically on a more masculine face, you would see that bridge of the nose being a lot stronger, but on something like this, you know, feminine, we want that cute button nose almost. And we'll work on reshaping this. We've kind of broke our nose pretty much. We'll fix this up. Let's get a little bit more pointed here, and start cleaning this shape. I'm going to just smooth out my nostrils for now because the geometry is getting a little stretched down there, a little bit tough to work with. Make sure that we're getting a nice rounded silhouette from the profile. Wrapping around here. And I'm just using my move transpose option there to scale that in a little bit. And once we start getting some more parts and pieces in, we might start to realize, hey, let's maybe, you know, make the eyes a little bit smaller, or I would typically wait till I start getting in my mouth and make sure I have all my facial features in to do that. But if you're noticing something that you might want to change, as long as we got the geometry in there, it should be fine for now. It's not like it's going anywhere. Kira, welcome back. How you doing? Can I review your latest sculpt? I absolutely can. We will be doing a live stream critique on, I see that ZBrush also posted a link to something, but if you guys want me to critique any of your stuff here on stream, I do all of that, or I'm doing all of that on this Friday. This Friday at noon EST, we will be doing another live stream critique. So if you guys want to get in on that, email me your stuff. Just type in !critique into chat, and yeah, we can take a look next Friday. Or this Friday, I should say. Alright. I think I'm going to just fill in this geometry real quick for our nostrils. Kind of, after I put those in, I'm like, now I want to change this shape quite a bit. So I think it's just going to help us to take a step back on our little nose here. Looking for more of a triangular kind of shape. Let's see. And remember, if your base is not working, then anything you do on top of that base isn't going to, you know, help improve that terrible stuff that you have underneath. Which is why I just took a step back on this and decided, hey, let's redo that shape that we just tried. Because it's not really working the way we want. And then a cool little trick, if you do want to work on multiple objects at once, you can go up into your Z plugin under T-Pose Master or Transpose Master. You can click on T-Pose Mesh. So I'll put everything into one object here, and then what you can do, what I'm going to do, is select all that, mask everything, and just scale in on my eyes a little bit. I'll just make one big old change to all the objects in the eyes at once. And then you click on T-Pose Subtool, go back through all your subtools, and make all those changes at once. Pretty neat, but we'll be looking at that more in depth in a little bit. Nice, these critique spaces could help to improve your work with constructive feedback. That is the entire point of them, yeah. We just did one last Friday. If you guys want to check that out, you know, it's probably not of your specific work since you're just now hearing about them, but I think it's helpful to watch other people's critiques as well. Just YouTube/Follygon, they all get uploaded there. The latest video, I think, was a live critique, yeah, from last Friday. It just went up yesterday. But yes, the next one, if you guys want to get in, here are the instructions for you. Email to follygon@gmail.com with a Z tool. And you too can get your stuff live critiqued on the internet. Amazing, I know. Gotta go get something to eat. Sounds like fun. I would love me some foods right now. What am I gonna do about this tight crease here? Step on down. Just see that form. Let me just soften that. And then I'll re-pinch that out. Just because that was Had a weird lip to it. Wasn't super easy to work with. I think our face is getting a little bit too pointed for my liking in some of these areas, so I will work to clean that up. And Zofo watched your tutorial on 3D printing and checked out Shapeways. What's the difference between professional plastic and sandstone? Sandstone is more of a grainy, brittle material, whereas professional plastic is probably, I'm guessing it's PVC. It might say on their website. I'm really not sure, but with sandstone you can print in color. The plastic is going to be either, it's probably PVC. I don't know if that's an SLA print. I'm guessing it's just like PVC plastic. But you'd have to check on their website. Typically what you would, if you're familiar with like 3D printing, if you're not super familiar with 3D printing, you probably think of the bed with the extruder. That's going to be like some PVC or ABS plastic. Whereas with like SLA technology, you could get some like nice resin prints, higher resolution. I don't know if I've ever used their professional plastic material, so I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head. I'm not like sponsored by Shapeways or anything. I just use them for my own personal stuff. So I'm not incredibly familiar with all their materials. Alright, I say we get a little bit more volume wrapping around the mouth here. And then put those nostrils back in. Don't want it to get, whoops, don't want it to get too soft back here. Still want a nice little transition between the jaw and the back of the head. Alright. So I said you could mask this off for the nostrils, or you could just take like a standard brush if you guys want to do it that way. There's always a million different ways to do this kind of thing. I like to use masking just because you can get your shape to be a little bit more accurate before you make your mark. I want, let's see, a little bit of a like triangular, a little bit of a triangular shape there. And I'm gonna see if softening the mask a little bit helps here. I don't think it'll matter too much. And then I was just scanning in along that area to help transition that a little bit better before. Alright, so the geometry is very stretched here, obviously. You could try smoothing this out, but you'll end up getting a pretty poor transition. So we'll probably do some remeshing so that we can work a little bit more easily on some of this area. But I think I'll just go ahead and make a few changes here to the shape. And then get ready to move on for something like our lips, which will be a great time for us to do some remeshing. All right, so for the lips, for the mouth, typically what I like to do is split my jaw, the lower portion of my mouth off. It makes it a little bit easier to create a mouth bag and just makes it easier in general to get in and sculpt on some of the inner portion of your lips for your character. So what I typically start off by doing is just grab like a damn standard brush or anything that's a little creepy to create a quick like stroke on your face. And you could even turn on lazy mouse. But we just want to figure out the initial kind of placement for our lips slash mouth. And then after you get that in place, it can maybe even be a little bit higher, but it shouldn't really matter too much. We will turn off perspective, and we're going to delete our subdivs because we don't need them anymore. We're going to be splitting this off. And I'm just going to draw a mask lasso through the jaw. I'll just very quickly mask off some of this. Or, you know what, actually that's fine to go all the way back. And then I'm going to press Ctrl W, which will polygroup that masked area. And then I'm going to split these off, split hidden, which is under your split menu. So now we have two separate pieces of geometry. Oh boy. I like to turn on double for anything that's open with some holes. It's down in your display properties under double. Make sure that's on so that we can see the inner portion of that geometry. And then we're going to Dynamesh these two pieces of geometry by themselves. If the resolution ends up dropping a lot lower than what you need or want, we can increase that. Maybe like, let's see what 300 does. Maybe go a little bit higher, 400. 400 retains most of these shapes pretty well, I think. So we'll stop there at 4. Let's do 400 down here as well. And now, let's turn off our neck and little body that we made earlier, just so we can focus on our head. So now what we can do is sculpt and mask off, you know, just like this bottom plane, and work only on a very specific area. Makes it a little bit easier so that we can see inside the mouth, actually create a mouth bag, which is what I'm going to do here right now. Just with a move brush, kind of push in. And now we can start sculpting our lips. You think their sandstone is gypsum powder and binder, usually with a super glue or epoxy finish. That is typically the case. I don't know what their exact mixture is. They don't reveal their secret formulae. But yeah, the sandstone material, it's a little brittle, but you can get some pretty nice results out of some cool full-colored figures. If you guys want to see some of those, I could go grab some of them. They're just on the desk behind me. Or if you guys want to see all of them, there is a link down below to my 3D print shop if you guys want to check out some of those. All right, let's start by Dynameshing. Now that I've kind of pulled in really tightly around these areas. Raphael Andres, thank you for the follow and welcome to the stream. How are you doing? All right. So these lips are very thin. We want to thicken these lips up, which leads us into our next really cool additional function that we can do with our move brush. We looked at the AccuCurve already, which is that tool that lets us pull out really sharp areas. Now we're going to look at back face masking, which allows us to work on only one side of a mesh at a time. And in this case, pull in and thicken up the lips here, which makes working on these so much easier. To do that, go up into your brush palette under, I believe it's under auto masking and back face masking. You can toggle that on or off for any brush. I plan on making a tutorial on this very soon on my YouTube channel to go over some more specific uses for this and how you can use it on some other brushes to make sculpting on thin objects a lot easier for you, or just sculpting in general a lot easier for you. Alright, so we've thickened up the top lip. Let's also thicken up the bottom. And I think I'm just going to spend some time working on these one half at a time and start shaping these up. So let's use some of the brushes that we've been using and start blocking out our larger shapes. Let's grab our top lip plane here. Use that back face masking again. Probably, let's see, what was that? It's like a huge crashing sound. This outer corner, I want a little bit more volume coming this way. And let me trim this up. So during our last critique live stream, if you guys were here for that, we ended up going through and sculpting some lips all the way through. It's on my YouTube channel if you guys want to check that out. But essentially there are 3 sections to the top lip and 2 to the bottom that we want to focus on when working on our lips. I will look at those again here shortly, but let's just focus on some of these big shapes first a little bit more. Jason, I believe it's Jason, if I remember correctly. Welcome back. How are you doing? Things are going great over here. We are going through, starting from scratch, from just a sphere, and looking at how we can sculpt some stylized character, some stylized female faces. Based on how long this is taking right now, we're an hour and a half in, I believe, looks like. So based on that, I don't think we're going to finish this, since I'm taking the time to describe as much as I can here. But for our stream tomorrow, we can maybe finish this out. Nuclear Dan, welcome back, dude. Alright, let's do the same thing down here. Getting some nasty stretching going on there. Up res a little bit. So again, really just focusing on the primary forms of the lips here initially. Using some pinch brush to block out the shape that I need, which we've been looking at for a while now. Some trim dynamic to help plane out certain areas. And I think I'm going to create just a little bit of a plane change here to help shape this lip up on the bottom. The way all these facial features work, they all kind of play off of each other. Specifically for the lower lip, it really plays off of the shape of the chin quite a bit. So it's kind of recommended, I think, that you should focus on both of these at the same time. So if you are beginning to work on your lips, be focusing on how your upper lip is transitioning into kind of this area here up into the cheek. You're also going to be focusing on the nose and how that's transitioning and how the nose is transitioning into the lip, yada 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 yada. All of it just kind of plays off of each other. So as you start to make those changes, you will notice more areas where some things need to be corrected as you continue moving forward. But that is why we put so much time into really getting a good kind of block out mannequin simplistic base, so that as we move forward and create those shapes, this becomes easier for us, so that we don't have to spend maybe as much time fixing things as we would if we didn't put in all that work in the beginning. So I try to really spend quite a bit of time in those early stages, take my time with it, keep things clean, And then after, you start blocking things out, you can maybe start getting some more of those secondary forms, which for this top lip involves the 3 kind of pillowed shapes of the lip. We'll try to get those in next. Let's see, I think already even with that's a little bit too much exaggeration, so what I will do is start to clean that up. A little bit of fill in and softening of that form. Just keep it gentle through here. And I'm gonna mask off this outer portion of the lip. Pull down a little bit more here. Actually, let's see how that's working. It's close to what I wanted. Let me just trim that back a little bit, and then we'll swap lips here in just a moment. Alright, so now from here I'm just going to start cleaning up some of this transitioning area here, work on the chin a little bit. Like I said, this is all kind of interconnected down here. So let's start with one of these guys. A little bit of an edge in there, a little bit of just fill in for the chin, just a little bit. Most of this is going to kind of blend back together and fade out. Let's just start getting some of it blocked out here. And then for the bottom lip, instead of having those kind of 3 distinct pillowed shapes, there are 2 on the bottom lip. Just kind of bisected down the middle. And it's a little messy right now, but that's okay. We want to just focus on those big shapes, make sure we get those in. Then we can clean it up. And when we go to combine these, we're going to have to open up the mouth a little bit so that we can Dynamesh and get this working pretty well together. But until then, let me do a quick cut here just to see how our mouth bag is doing. Make sure that seals up nicely in there, which it looks like it is. So I think I can start heading in that direction at least a little bit. So I'm going to open this mouth just to start heading in that direction. And I am going to play around with the thickness of this lip a little bit. Ooh, and there's our first crash. Right when we started, somebody said, "May you never crash" in ZBrush today. I figured there'd be at least one, so. I think we're good though. That should have recovered everything that we were working on there. Catch what you missed on the rerun. No worries, man. Whoops. Luckily, we got a recovered Z tool, so we can just double click on that, open it back up, and we should be right where we left off. No worries. Didn't lose a single step. That's what I like to see. Whoops, switch back to our mask lasso brush there. Make sure we're using the proper brushes here. Change my lighting again so that I can see in here for this shape. And I am making the mouth right now for blending these together. I'm trying to open it up quite a bit more than what it's going to be once we actually merge it together. But the reason you want to open it up a little bit more than what you actually want for this stage is so that when you Dynamesh, you're not getting a bunch of parts merging together throughout the middle of the lip here. You just want the corner. Just want to get a nice merge right around the corner. And then once you get to a good place there, once you're happy with what you're seeing, we can Dynamesh and merge these together. I'll just do a little bit more work here on these lips, and then we can do that. So just a few things that are kind of sticking out to me real quick. Other than that, I think the only kind of large-scale change I wanted to make was involving pulling in on the corners here a little bit more, because we're not getting enough facial wrap on the corners of the mouth. And again, we'll be able to blend that out here in just a little bit. If you're having trouble figuring out the roundness that you want for your mouth, what I recommend doing is inserting a cylindrical shape, a cylinder, better known as a cylinder, into your mouth cavity, just to represent teeth. You can either append one or insert it directly on your mesh. I'll just append a cylinder here really fast. Actually, I'll initialize this into a Y cylinder, just to make it a little easier on us. Fits a little bit better too. And then I will crease the edges because it's not smoothing properly. So let me just go into crease and click on crease. The default settings of 45 should crease that properly for us. And I do this just to help me figure out exactly where I want, you know, if I want to put in teeth later. It just kind of helps me figure out how round I want to make the area around the mouth. Make sure that you're not getting too flat there. Again, looking at those extreme views will also help you figure out those shapes. But from here, let's go ahead and merge these together and continue sculpting on this. Do you turn on autosave in ZBrush? It's on by default. It is called Quick Save. It is in your preferences under Quick Save. I keep my default settings at 20 for maximum and rest. Restoration doesn't really matter because I've never had ZBrush crash while I'm not using it. So you can actually crank that all the way up to 600 to let it like pretty much never do it. But yes, I do keep Quick Save on by default. I would highly encourage and recommend, unless you're like extremely desperate for space, or you're, for some odd reason, saving undo history a lot, which you probably don't need unless you're like recording a video or something. It crashes on you sometimes when it saves a large file. I would recommend, if you are not already on ZBrush 2018.1, it's been a lot more stable than a lot of the older versions. If you have not updated yet, I would highly encourage it. It's been so much more stable for me. But you can also clear your Quick Save folder in your preferences under Quick Save by clicking Delete Quick Save Files, or if you find the location of your Quick Save folder, you can delete some of those manually, which is in your installation drive under Users, Public Documents, ZBrush Data 2018 Quick Save, if you want to find that. Alright, so I've merged these together, and now I'm going to Dynamesh them together. Making sure that the corners aren't too terrible. I think let's just do a quick Dynamesh just to see how this works. We can look at the corners of the mouth. They're merging together a little bit more than what I want, so let's grab one side here and open up the mouth even more. Wide mouth. And let's just make sure that we got enough room in here for this. Just want these to be nice and clean when they Dynamesh. Just pulling that inner edge back a little bit. Alright, let's try again here with another Dynamesh. I'm thinking we'll just increase that resolution a tad. Let that do its thing. Matthew, what is going on, my dude? Raiding with a party of 3. Welcome everybody that's joining us. How you guys doing? Happy New Year to you as well, man. Thank you, I appreciate that. The new year. New year, new me. No, not really. Kinda same old boy. Let me, real quick here. Let me reload in our other character that we were using for examples and references. Didn't go in our quick save because it just got the recovered tool. It's no worries. Just plop that back up there and we will reference that again if we need to. Alright, so I've just, if you're just joining us for the first time, I'm Follygon. We are going through the entire process of sculpting a stylized character head / face, much like this one here. We're aiming for a little bit of a different face. You know, I don't want to copy this one since I've already done this once. I don't want it to be exactly the same. If you have never done this before, or if you're just joining us for the first time, there's a ton of free stuff over on my YouTube channel. Links below to all that good stuff, as well as my Gumroad. But yes, if you want to see the entire process from the beginning, no worries, that'll be up on my YouTube channel tomorrow. But let's go ahead and continue on here with our mouth. We are going to work on cleaning up the area where we just combined these, since we're getting this really hard edge here. It really shouldn't be that hard to clean up, just a little bit of smooth brush, maybe some trim dynamic. All these brushes that we've been looking at already. And then from there, a lot of what we're going to do is just going to be cleaning up this transition now that we've got that in place. Also working on making sure that we're getting enough of that roundness in our face still. Now that we've kind of made some more changes here, we can maybe make the wet mouth like a little bit more narrow. There's a lot of room for improvement here, especially in just the surface alone, which is pretty rough since we kind of just sculpted that in there pretty quick. But what we want to do from here, I think next, let's look at our mouth bag, which is the inside of our mouth, just to see how that's shaping up. So I'm going to hide everything. It's a little bit confusing to look at the inside of your mesh from time to time. Just make sure you have double on if you want to try doing something like this. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit, round it out. In this year, will you be at or on, will you be there on ZBrush Summit? I don't know if I'll be on ZBrush Summit. I would like to go to ZBrush Summit this year. We shall see though. See how some things line up. Typically around that time of the year I'm really busy, so it's very hard for me to get all the way out to LA slash, I think they actually hold it in Noman, if I remember correctly, which is right next to the Pixo office. But yeah, I would like to just kind of see how some things line up. But if anybody else will be there, I look forward to the possibility of saying hello and seeing some friendly faces. But that's not for a while. We just had one, so we're like 8-10 months away. When is it? October, August, somewhere around there. Or actually, I think, I don't remember when it was this year. I want to say September. That sounds right to me. Alright, so we have combined our two facial halves, right? Now what we can focus on is cleaning this up, or we can go ahead and remesh from here. It just kind of depends on how you like working. If you don't mind working in Dynamesh too much, then you can continue to sculpt and plane out some of this stuff. I like to keep my mesh in a place where it's a little bit easier to work with subdivs, as we've looked at already. So what I would typically do after merging those together, the top and bottom halves of my lips there, is run a ZRemesh with a function called keep groups. So if you open up the ZRemesh option here and turn on keep groups, when you ZRemesh, try to let this go quick here, it should look at the two poly groups that we have separating our mouth, and it should hopefully put a nice clean edge loop around that area. Depending on your geometry and where exactly that edge loop lands, ZRemesh could get a little bit more confused. It looks like it's done a decent job, but there's quite a bit of pinching and some other stuff going on in there. So what I will do is spend some time cleaning this up just a tad, and then we can remesh it. But I just wanted to show you guys really quick so you can understand the process that we are aiming for. So let's go ahead and select our top and bottom jaw alone and continue cleaning these up just a tad. It's mainly around this area here that we want to clean up and make that a little bit more workable. ZBrush has a lot of trouble remeshing these kinds of tight areas where it has like a loop or anything like that. So that's the purpose of remeshing with keep groups on. A way to get around this is to open up your mouth even wider. So if you guys want to play around with that, that's also a good idea. We can maybe do that a little bit more here, just to try to get like a nice kind of squared off area in there, and then we can remesh and clean it up. And then we can work on transitioning some of those planes a little bit better. I'm going to press Ctrl W to polygroup everything that's visible, and I'm going to re-put in that edge loop right through here to make sure that I'm getting a nice clean cut. Let that slice through, let that calculate, and then I'll run a mirror and weld just to make sure that those are symmetrical. Let's try that one more time. ZRemesh, keep groups on. If you want to retain another area of your face a little bit better, you can also use poly groups around there. I'll typically do it in like the corners of my eyes or something like that. It's really up to you. I would experiment with it and check out some different options. Let's go ahead and ZRemesh here. Lori Ghost, what is going on? Disappointed with the stylized characters tutorial. Seems to be a little rushed. Have to pause and rewind every few seconds just to get what you actually did. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So maybe a little bit too fast on some of the stuff. As I say with all my tutorial content, feel free to shoot me an email if you have any questions, or even if on my streams, if I go a little bit too fast, I'm happy to answer any questions. But that's disappointing. I'm sorry to hear that. Feel free to shoot me an email if you want to be a little bit more specific about the parts that you are disappointed in, but I'm sorry to hear that. Matthew is going to the summit this year, really far from you, but you will make it. Matthew, I'm not sure, are you even in the US? I am not actually even close. I'm all the way over on the East Coast. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, so that's a little bit far for me as well. I think that you're a little bit further out than me. I think you're over in the Eastern Continental area. I'm going to try a couple more Z-remeshes on here. We're having a lot of troubles with the corners of our mouth. But again, what we're trying to do is split these up into keep groups areas. We're just getting a really bad remesh in the corner. So what I'm going to do is use another combination of a brush with Z-remesh to get a little bit of a better option here. Let's look at using the Z-remesher guides brush. I use this just to help your topology flow a little bit. It's essentially a curve brush, and what happens here is depending on where we put these curves, it will control our edge flow a little bit better. So let's see here. Let's get this edge. Let's draw one curve out here along this bottom lip. Wrap around here to the side. And I will do the same thing on the top lip. Wrap around here to the side. And, ooh, we don't want that touching there. Let's try that one more time. And hopefully, slicing through here, it's going to be a lot more control. We'll see what this does. So again, that is the Z-remesher guides brush. It's just Z-remesher guides right there. And then I'm also using that in conjunction with keep groups on, and we'll see what we can do with the corner of our mouth here. Oh, you know what? Actually, I think we're just pulling in. Here we go. Let's look at our mouth bag really quick. I see what's wrong. So let's just select only our mouth bag here. Hide everything on the sides. And what I'm going to do is pull in on the corners a little bit. We're just getting a little bit too much of a sweep here, I think, and that's really not helping that figure out what we want the topology to look like. So let's just straighten that up a little bit. A little bit of smooth, just to make sure that that's getting nice and round through there. And I think that should be good. Let's take a look in here. And now that in combination with these remesher guides here, let me do a quick save, just to make sure we're not going to have any unexpected crashes, and try again on the remesh. You are in the Eastern Continental areas, Europe, Hungary. You're in the Hungary town. Osmose says, as a counterpoint, I find pretty much all tutorials go at a glacial pace. I much prefer a faster flow. I mean, yeah, everybody's different. Everybody's got different opinions. I try to cover as much as I can and try to go through. Oh, whoa, what the f is that? That's probably not helping. I try to cover as much content as I can, as quick as I can, just because there's so much to go over. People ask me, like, somebody just asked, like, any tips on topology? Any tips on, you know, making clean characters? Typically, the answer isn't something that I can just say in a couple minutes. It's complicated. It's a lot. It's a lot of content, a lot of information. I'm gonna try just using the Z-remesher guides here because we're having a lot of. Oh, whoops! I'm gonna turn off keep groups. Sorry, that's what I meant to do. Because we're having a lot of trouble with the corner of the mouth there not reading properly. So we're not getting a very good separation there. Normally keep groups is really good at this kind of stuff. It just kind of depends on your geometry. It could have also been because of that extra poly group up top, which was being very finicky. So we're going to continue using the Z-remesher guides here because we are actually having some better luck with that. Let me try this one more time. right through there. Or actually, here. I just alt-clicked and dragged over those to delete them. It's a little trick for you. So let's get one coming out the corner of the mouth, and one wrapping around here. Now we're not at a stage, even if you were, sculpting this up and wanting to do manual retopo for this, I wouldn't do it at this stage. Can I grab that, please? There we go. I would not do that at this stage simply because I still have to merge in my eyelids and ears and everything else. I'm just trying to get something a little bit easier to work on for the corner of the mouth. It just makes it. I want to get to subdiv so I can work on this now. A little bit messy right now with all the Dynamesh Geo. Video's sped up. Audio is not always in sync with what's happening on screen. There might be some areas where that is the case. Like I said, shoot me an email, and we can figure it out. Seagull Rush, what's going on? There are certain parts of the sculpting process that are sped up where, ooh, that's a little bit better. From what I recall, there are some areas of the sculpting process that are sped up. In terms of what I'm doing on screen for more repetitive areas. Let's see here. So we still got a little bit of a awkward quad right here. It's not transitioning super well, but this is still clean enough that I think we're going to be able to work on this a lot easier than just our Dynamesh Geo, which is pretty rough right now. So what I'm going to do is do what we did earlier through projection with a Control D to subdivide, and then project on up, project all, Control D, project all, Control D, and project all. And I'll do one more subdivide here. Subdiv. Delete that. I will also say that the tutorial, Lori, that you're talking about, the Stylized Appealing Female Faces tutorial, this is more of an advanced tutorial, intermediate to advanced, so I'm sorry that that was the case, that you felt that it was sped up and even unsynced at certain parts. Definitely shoot me an email and we can talk about it further. But maybe something, like one of these courses, maybe not the absolute intro course because you jumped over here, but maybe something like this is a little bit more at your level. Again, I don't think I've ever seen your work or had you on the live critique stream before, but again, shoot me an email and we can discuss, figure out what we can do to fix that up for you. Is that Carrie Ann Eastwood? Sierran? Carrie Ann? I've heard the name Carrie Ann, but I'm assuming it's just like Carrie plus Ann. Sierran, maybe? What's going on? Welcome to the stream. How are you doing? Kayran, gotcha. That's an interesting name. I've never heard that one before. I like it. Working and lurking. That's what we all do, right? That's what I do when I'm watching stuff online. Always working on other stuff from watching any art-related content online. I feel like the people that watch art streams are the people that, typically are just working on their own stuff all the time, working on their own art. I don't know. Maybe that's incorrect. Maybe non-art people also watch art streams. But I feel like for the most part, a majority of people that watch like art streams, art videos, are people that are, interested in art themselves. I think I want to create that poly group back through here, through the mouth again, through the corners, because, let's see. We want to be able to easily select that. Unfortunately, with poly groups, when you're working with subdivision levels, whoops, accidentally Dynamesh that. turn off Dynamesh so we don't have that happen again. As you step down and up through your subdivision levels, it will take the shape of whatever your lowest subdivision level is. So if you are going to do that, I recommend doing that selection at your lowest subdiv here. And wham bam slam. Let's see. Grab that guy there. And I think that's probably about as clean as a selection as we're gonna get. So let's Control W on that. Let's get a little bit of a different color. And there we go. So now what we can do, now that we have that, Control W again is to polygroup what you have selected or masked or visible on screen. Now we can just Control click and it will select only that polygroup. So now we can use that to our advantage to very quickly select just our bottom portion of our mouth. We can start working on where this is transitioning a little bit better. Using our move brush, smooth brush, all that good stuff. Whoops, didn't mean to unmask that. Oh, getting a little bit of a weird turn there. Let's undo. Let's flip this. Still getting a little bit of a dip in there. I think what I'll do is select just this area or try to just fill this in very quickly with like a clay tubes and then kind of just smooth it out a little bit. That seems to be working. All right. So I think we've kind of exhausted some time here on our lips. There obviously still a lot more work that we can do on these, but we should probably move on to something else like our eyes and nose a little bit more, even our ears, just trying to get all of this to a little bit more of a finished state. Very quickly, just to make sure that for people that are hanging out on the tutorial, watching this for the first time over on the YouTube channel later, or for you guys here, just so you guys can see how I would go about creating some hair. There are a few different strategies for this. What I recommend doing is starting off with a quick base for your hair. And what I mean by that is just getting like a skin cap or a bald cap essentially of hair, kind of in the basic shape here. Using a mask lasso, the brush that we've been using this whole time. Maybe you can create even some sideburns for it, but we just want a pretty simplistic shape here, hopefully, and just do something real quick here, just to illustrate what we want. Maybe get that wrapping around the ear a little bit more. And from there, what we'll do is run an extraction, which is down here under Tool, Subtool, Extract. You can click that by default. It's at the 2 units cubed scale. It's going to be a little bit thicker than probably what you want. So what I recommend doing is, let's clean up that mask just a tad more. And then do the same thing with the extraction, but this time I'm going to lower this thickness to, it was on 0.02 I think there, so let's do 0.005 or so. See how thick that gets. Alright, so that's more of what I'm looking for. So from there I'll click Accept. It'll create a separate piece of geometry for me. This will stay masked though, so you probably want to Control click and drag to unmask that. Same here. And then for this piece of geometry, what I'm actually going to do is just select the top poly group. My select lasso, Control Shift click and select. Turn on double, delete hidden. And from here, what we're going to do is just remesh this, get it a little more simple, and then we can add some thickness back into that. There are lots of different ways to go about this. I just wanted to show you the extraction method so that you can have a base and you can maybe work off of this. But if you want it to be a little bit more clean, then I recommend either just masking off a certain area and extracting that manually with a poly group, or doing what I just did here with the extraction. And then just a quick Z mesh at like 0.1. It doesn't have to be anything specific. We just want something low res that we can make this a little bit more simplistic so that we can work on it. And after remeshing, ooh, that's a nice little star right there. That's okay. Different spelling. I am doing great. Thank you for asking. Someone to learn something. Yes, I feel like. Well, I was just saying about the people that watch art streams are typically, I feel like, a lot of artists because I don't know. I guess maybe to learn something. I wouldn't say that's like a blanket statement, but that I'm sure that is probably one reason why people hang out on art streams that are interested in art. Maybe it would help if you put beginner/intermediate labels on the titles or the descriptions. That is a good idea. I talk about the content in the tutorials description, but maybe specifically stating that would be an excellent idea, just to make sure that there is no confusion about the skill level necessary to do some of that stuff. Might drop a question. Might drop a question. No questions allowed. You know me. You know I hate questions here. Chow time, chow. I feel like I need to work chow more into my my library of cool kid slang. Let's delete an edge loop and insert a poly loop right through here, so it's a little bit more clean right in the middle. I'm doing a little bit of extra work and cleanup here that's not really necessary, but I think you guys get the idea. You get a basic piece of geometry here for the head. Let's grab our Z modeler brush and run and extrude all polygons. And I'm just going to click and drag in, give that a little bit of thickness. Now we have something that's clean and it has a little bit of a thickness applied to it. You do want to make sure that you come down into your display properties though when you do this. Turn off double, and you'll notice that the normals are flipped. So just click on flip and that will correct that for you. Alright, and then from there you can smooth it out, add some subdivs, start sculpting on top of this, and you have your hair cap. The other way that you'd want to go through making hair maybe a little bit more for like a longer hairstyle or something like that is just duplicate something so that you can insert some geometry on. Grab either a curved tube snap brush, cube tube, whatever you want to use. I'll show a very quick demonstration with the curved tube snap brush just so we can get an idea here. Oh, we got two of them. That's why it's freaking out. Do that one more time with the curved tube snap. And then we will come into our curve modifiers. Turn on size, curve fall off. Pull up on one side, pull down on the other. And then click to update our curve. And that will give you that nice clean taper so that you can start creating a bunch of hair strands. You can mess with the shape a little bit more if you think it's getting a little bit too thin, or if you want to make the shape a little bit more, visually interesting. You can go crazy with these to get all sorts of different results. I like to typically just get some basic quick taper throughout that shape, so thick to thin, and create multiple strands. But from here you want to accept that, only work on just that, delete the extra object that we've done so many times now, and start working on this shape. Obviously I just quickly drew in a curve there to demonstrate that, but that's how I would go about creating some more longer hair. If you're more interested in creating some more hair, the most recent project here over on my ArtStation, this guy, you can check out if you guys are looking to make hair maybe in more of this style. This is like medium length, chin length hair. So for something like this, head on over to my YouTube channel. Osmose, thank you for the follow. And it looks like part 8. Part 8 is when I started putting in that hair. I also, part 8 and part 9 maybe, I believe. I believe part 9 is also when I was doing some stuff with the hair. And then shush me. sure. That is correct. Yes, part 8 and part 9. This guy's hair was this guy's hair was tough to figure out, but I had a lot of fun working on it, and I would recommend checking that out if you guys want to see some more processes for hair. But let's continue on with our face from here. I'm just going to hide our little hair kind of blockout extraction there, so it doesn't distract us from messing with the shape of the head or anything else, and we can continue shaping some more stuff up here. Let's also hide the body, and I guess we can just keep the neck on for now. Some people want to know people in their community. That's also a good reason to hang out on art streams. What's the difference between ZBrush and Blender? ZBrush is a, the industry standard digital sculpting tool, or high resolution digital sculpting. If you're not familiar with what that means, digital sculpting is essentially working with high resolution topology, something like this, and using brushes that maybe seem a little bit more similar to sculpting with clay in real life. But the added benefit of working digitally is obviously that you can do stuff that you can't do in doing traditional sculpting, like add clay or subtract, quote, clay very quickly with a number of different brushes and different brush shapes. Blender is more of a, well, first of all, it's a free tool. It's also a full-fledged 3D modeling package, so it's more akin to Maya or Max or something like that. It does have some sculpting tools in it, but they're nowhere near as powerful or robust as what you would see in something like ZBrush. But that's kind of the basic difference here. I've actually recently created a render scene in Blender, just so you guys can see that. Actually, I'll show it off with my dude here, my Android 17, since I did him recently. Oh, where did I save you? Let me find it real quick here. Render. There we go. Alright, so I'll just open this up really fast so you guys can see. For those that have not seen the render scene setup that I've made here in Blender. This really didn't take me that long. If you are familiar with working in 3D packages, a lot of this stuff is exactly the same. Let me, I believe that is it, the shading there, that fourth option. So we'll give that a second to turn on. That might lag the stream though, so I'll just set the viewport here to 16 so it doesn't render a billion samples. And by billion, I meant 32. But yes, very simple lighting setup. Give that a second to kind of render in there. It's a 3-point studio lighting setup. I went over this a little while ago on my stream, so if you're interested in checking this out, I can hear my computer cooking. My fan just kicked on, or probably a bunch of my fans. But yeah, check this out over on my YouTube channel if you guys want to see how I made something like this. It's really not super hard. I mean, I have a basic plane of geometry here that is beveled and rounded, and then I have just 3 planes with an emissive material applied to them, set up for a front or key light, a side or fill light, and a back or rim light. But yeah, you can end up getting some pretty good results from some pretty quick setup here. And this is obviously with a couple different materials applied and different colors and everything else. So just spruced up, make it a little bit more visually interesting. But if you guys want to check that out, again, that's over on my YouTube channel. And I will kill you. I will kill you, Android 17. Goodbye. For instance, if you were building a VR chat model, you would model it in ZBrush and then give it a bone structure in Blender. You would model it, if you wanted to, work with both, you would do the high res in ZBrush, and then you would probably like retopo it and in Blender and UV and texture and everything else, and then set up the rig. I don't know what rigging system is used for VR chat, but if that's something that you're interested in, I'm sure there are a ton of great free tutorials on YouTube. Actually, someone that hangs out here on the stream quite often, her name is Katie. I think she's been streaming lately. I'm not sure if she still is. I haven't seen her online or in the ZBrush Discord all too often lately, but she has been creating some stuff for VR chat, so maybe you can pick her brain and see what she's been working on. Get some tips and tricks from Katie. But if you go, there's a link down below to the community ZBrush Discord, which I am the admin of. I don't have it open right now, but go join up there. She is one of the moderators on the community, so she'll be in the top right. You should be able to find her pretty easily and shoot her a message. Alright, let's grab our schnoz here and start making some changes. Really, at this point, just a bunch of changes that I want to go through in general and start making to get a little bit closer to an appealing look. Now that we have all the parts and pieces in there, it's time that we can focus on making something look a little bit better. But a lot of the process is just, constructing the shapes and forms and different things that we need in here. And then you can take some time to focus in on specifics a little bit more. I think the main thing that I want to do right now is just take some time to close up our mouth and work on the shapes of my lips just very quickly. And then make sure that from the profile here, we're getting a nice shape. Right now it feels like it's wrapping too much, and then it feels like our eyes are still a little bit larger than what I want. So let me work on just using my move brush and shape up this area a bit more. One thing that I like to do, we showed this off earlier, but hopping into Transpose Master, it's up in your Z plugin menu. You can turn on symmetry and no, I wanted to rotate these up, scale in just a tad. Let's see, it's a little hard to see because I don't know what this exactly looks like with the creases on there because they're not applied right now. Anytime you hop into Transpose Master, none of your creases follow with you. So let's see, from here, that scale feels quite a bit better to me. I feel like the eyes need to be a bit taller though. So let's go back, T-pose. And we'll grab these lids. And we will focus on not only making these eyes a little bit more appealing, but to do that, one of the things I want to focus on specifically is eyelid order, which I mentioned earlier. Eyelid order is essentially Dinardry. Oh my gosh, definitely butchered that one. But welcome to the stream and thank you for the follow. Eyelid order is essentially the order in which you want the eyelids to hit if you were to draw a flat plane out from the front of your face and slam it forward into your eye. So you want that top lid to hit first. Where's my eyeball? Turn that off. You want the top lid to hit first, then the bottom lid, then the inner corner, and then the outer corner. So in this case, I want to bring in my bottom lid just a bit more. It's sticking out just a little bit further than what I like here. And then let's make sure that we're getting a nice shape here. I think I'm just really gonna pull this bottom corner down a bit more and try to straighten this out. It's gonna take some finagling, so let me finagle for a bit. I make you curious to try sculpting again. Well, hey, that's cool. Hop on it. Get some sculpting done. I love me some sculpting. And hey, well, hello. Welcome. How you doing, Dean? What kind of sculpting are you interested in? Character sculpting? More of props, weapons, hard surface stuff? I was thinking it would be funny to do a tutorial on how hard surface sculpting was done in ZBrush back before we had stuff like the Z Modeler brush, where things were just like sculpted with Dynamesh and a crap ton of slicing and clipping brushes. Man, it was like, it's terrible compared to the tools that we have now. It's a little ridiculous, honestly. All right. So I'm working on that eyelid order that I just mentioned, but I'm also working on making sure that we're getting enough depth in that back corner, enough depth in this inner corner, and making sure that we're getting some good wrap there, making sure that we're getting a nice appealing shape. There's a lot that goes into eyes. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is right now open up the eyes a little bit more, focus more on getting a hit here and then a turn for the upper eyelid, and then for the bottom one, more of a flat into a hit here and then a turn up. Natural kind of shape that we see in the human eye, but obviously just exaggerated to a ridiculous amount right now. So all that's kind of going on in the back of my head while I am pushing and pulling some different shapes around. Making a game for learning purposes and currently on character modeling. Well, that sounds like fun. Are you making a game in, so if you're doing character modeling, that means you're doing a 3D game, I guess. So are you doing something in Unity? Unity is something I see a lot of people that are learning work in. Are you doing something in Unreal? Those are kind of the two that people gravitate towards the most. Or maybe even, actually, I don't think Game Maker has 3D. I don't know if it does. Last time I saw Game Maker, it was only 2D. You might have been able to do 2.5D stuff in it. I'm really not sure. I haven't really done much with Game Maker. I've played around with Unity and Unreal for a little while though. It has been a long time. Probably at least a few years since the last time I opened up Unreal Engine. Could you do a ZBrush Core hard surface tutorial if you want to challenge in a similar vein? I do not have ZBrush Core. I do not own it because I use the full version of ZBrush. So, no, I cannot do that. I apologize. I would if I could though, because I know a lot of people out there are using ZBrush's baby brother, ZBrush Core. Alright, I'm gonna nudge some verts around a little bit more, make sure that that lid shape is working out. And another thing that I'm thinking about while I'm doing this is thick to thin or tapered shapes. I want to turn this hair off. I don't know how that got turned back on. But thick to thin or tapered shapes, it's essentially this idea that you don't want this uniform stroke length throughout an entire stroke. For something like this, I'm going to go a little bit more thin on the top eyelid as we are on this inner area. And this will be more of an eyelash thing once I get the eyelash in there. Then I'll go a little bit more thick towards the outside. So a little bit more of a tapered shape there. Ooh, that's a bad little angle turn there. So I know we're taking a lot of time in like specific areas now, but now we're kind of in that stage where if we want this to look good, we gotta take the time to make it look good. So a little bit more of that thick to thin on the bottom lid, And I think the shape could be a little bit more just kind of squared off here. So I think I'm gonna work on that a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, eyes, very important. We wanna make sure that we get a nice wrap here. And of course, everything has to work well together. So there are obviously a few changes that probably more than a few changes that we want to make to our face to get that to more of an appealing stage. But we got everything in here that we're able to work with. So really from here, it's just a matter of pushing, pulling, and getting things to a little bit of a nicer stage. Again, I recommend if you don't have a reference that you're working from, definitely get one. It's going to make things a lot easier on you. If you're just trying to experiment and find some appealing shapes, it still might be useful for you to find some references for some shapes that you like and try to copy those. Black Frost, welcome to the stream and thank you for the follow. Watashi ga kita. I cannot wait for that show to come back. Need me some more My Hero. Alright. Let's clean up around our lips a little bit because we got quite a bit of ugly surfacing going on here. Let's see. Hello, hello. How goes it? I think I'm going to begin softening the transition up here for our brow. We have had this creased pretty tightly almost this entire time since the beginning of the stream, since we started creating this shape. So let's just go through and hit that with a little bit of smooth brush on some of our lower subdivision levels. And slowly start softening some of this transitional area out. And I will go back through and tighten up some of this, but I want to, whoa, where'd we go? Okay. Well, that was fun. I want to soften a lot of these transitional areas, like around the nose and around that brow, like we just pointed out. Get something a little bit more feminine. Typically, if you have a lot of these hard edges, sharp shapes, it ends up making things look a little bit more strong, a little bit more masculine, and that's not what we're aiming for today. I think I want this to just plane out almost entirely through here. So I'm going to do some destruction here with my trim dynamic brush. We love destroying stuff. Just to get that a little bit more flat. Can we push it even further? Probably. I would say so. Let's look at some of these extreme views, just making sure that we are getting some good wrap around our face and maybe not looking too flat in certain other areas. It's always important. Would it work if you drew a reference from your OC and tried to sculpt from that? Clothing real reference from Google, of course. And how can I display it in ZBrush? I tried, but I don't know. Yeah, Dean. So what I would recommend is if you're trying to get into sculpting or if you're trying to sculpt your own character, I would honestly recommend not sculpting your own character. I would recommend finding a reference of something that is done by a professional concept artist and try to copy that as best as you can. Because what that does is it gives you a really kind of high bar for yourself to try to hit, and it also gives you a really specific goal to aim for. You're trying to copy this reference, whereas when it's your own thing, you can kind of say, you know, in 3D I want to do it this way instead. It kind of constricts your options a little bit. And actually, restricting your options is a lot of the time a good thing. It kind of helps you to, you know, not having, essentially limiting your options makes it easier for you to do a project in this case, I would say. It sounds a little backwards thinking, but it just kind of works. It's just how it is. Plus, if you are, you know, unless you have like a 2D concept that you're super proud of that you want to turn into 3D, I would really recommend and encourage people to not create their own stuff from 2D to 3D. I think finding a higher quality piece in 2D that you really like and that you would like to transform into 3D would be a better option, and it will help you more in the long run for training in your sculptural abilities. It's because you're probably going to have something, like I said, with a higher bar to set, or bar to aim for, not to set. A higher bar to reach. I think that chin needs to be a bit more thin, but we're starting to get there in some of these shapes. I think I'm going to tighten up. Where'd my pinch brush go? The brow line just a little bit. Let's see. You know what? I'm actually going to hit this with a quick trim dynamic. It feels a little fat to me, a bit too much volume. Did I draw my reference? No, this is just a digital sculpt that I did. Based off of a bunch of Disney characters. Here, actually, I think I have the folder. Here's just a bunch of screenshots from Wreck-It Ralph 2, where there's, what's her name, Penelope? I think her name is Penelope. She walks into the Disney princess's room, and I just copied a bunch of aspects that I liked from the different faces here. Including some stuff from the hands to create this face here. So this is not, I'm actually not using that as a reference, I'm using it as an example so that people can see kind of some of the direction that we're aiming for, but also I'm using it to perform some sculptural examples on. But I do have another character here that I'm using as a reference that I'll pull up in just 2 seconds. Where'd it go? So this is a character not completely modeled by Chadwick Dusenberry, but you should check Chadwick out on Instagram. But Guzsaurus, there's his @ username there. We'll zoom in on it so you guys can see Guzsaurus. He created the base for this character, I believe, and Chadwick is doing some more work on top of that. But that is what I'm using for the reference for the shape of the face that I would like to reach. I wanted to do something a little bit more with a pointed chin, a little bit tighter in the face, and I like that aspect of that character. So that's what we're aiming for, a little bit tighter chin. Copy and then edit in your own style. I would not actually do it in your own style. It depends what your goals are. You know, it absolutely depends on what your goals are. What I would encourage people to do, though, is to go on like the front page of ArtStation, or if you have a folder of, why is this taking so long to load? A folder of a bunch of images that you like or characters that you like, and try to find a 2D illustration of a character, maybe not something so complicated. I meant to go back to ArtStation. Maybe not something so complicated, but something that you can try to translate to 3D. Like if you're wanting to do a stylized character, the original concept artist of this, Hoon Sunsang, is awesome. Hoon Sunsang has a ton of concepts in a lot of really good styles. I love this guy's work. He's got some really cool stuff on here. But yeah, I don't know, maybe something like this dude. I like this guy a lot. I use him in a little tutorial that I'm working on. But yeah, that's what I would recommend. But, you know, depends what your goals are as well. You're bad. No, it's okay. I mean, it's... I don't do a lot of stuff in 2D. Most of the stuff I do is just in 3D. Do some looking through ArtStation. Yeah, man. A lot of great concepts on there for stuff. All sorts of goodies. Let's see. I want, I actually want this edge to turn a little bit faster here. And then just trying to plane that transition a little bit better. Let's turn that edge. I'm not going to keep these incredibly tight, but I need to figure out where this needs to hit. So at least for right now, keep it a little bit tighter. And then for this edge, just soften this some. Just kind of pull that up through there into the corner of the eye, or about the corner of the eye. I think that starts to feel a little bit better. Other than that, let's just clean up this here, so we're not getting that awkward. Or you know what? Actually, we can transition this into kind of a little bit of the fat pad around here. So above the outside of your eyelid, you typically have a little bit of a fat pad. Most people do. Is my brush being weird? It is. So what I'll do is I'll just round this out, soften this form, and blend that in here. Alright, so that's starting to feel a lot better to me. Let's see. One thing that I want to do, just make sure that we do it today so that we are getting all this stuff within our stream just for today. We'll probably do, like I said, more stuff on this tomorrow. But let's look at creating some eyelashes very quickly, right after I clean up a little bit around our lips. Some stuff I want to clean up there. I think I'm going to pretty much get rid of that transitional form there altogether, and I want to play with the size and shape of this chin. Probably just a bit smaller in general. Do a mix of studies and inventing. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it depends what your goals are. If you want to be more of a concept artist, maybe it's cool to play around doing your own concepting in ZBrush. But if you're looking at learning how to sculpt and get better at sculpting, there's really not a lot of 3D concept artist positions out there. It's slowly kind of becoming more of a thing, but not too much. So if you want to be a 3D conceptor, you're gonna have to be like really good at it. You're gonna have to be the best, one of the best for sure. Just because that doesn't really exist too much right now. Maybe in the future we'll have more of it. I would hope so. But yeah, I would focus on, if you want to just be a modeler or a high resolution modeler or a character artist, a lot of what your job is going to be is accurately translating something that's already made in 2D to 3D. If you're just doing it for a hobby, do whatever the hell you want, right? it's your time, so go crazy. But I would recommend that if you want to like professionally do something like this, all of what you're going to be doing is translating stuff that already exists from 2D to 3D. So you should be able to show in your portfolio that you're very good at that. So, like I said, depends what you want. Depends what you want to do. Alright, let's continue messing with proportions. Perspective here for a little bit while we do this. I'm gonna wrap this shape back up into the head a little bit better. Try to get a little bit more round volume there. And then we can look at making our eyelashes, which are very simple and easy to do. Oh no, there's no way. Bob, Rod, Dob, Rob, Bob, Dob, Dob. Thank you for the follow. And welcome to the stream. I tried too late and then it started to vanish on me. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for the follow. There were so many Rod, Bobs in there, I lost track. I feel like half of the fun of creating your Twitch name is just making it impossible to say. You just want to get on this level. Well, start sculpting. If I can do it, you can do it. Kind of looking a little my precious-y right now, aren't we? Jeez, that was a little absurd for our selection. Let's grab our scale. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm just pulling in the eyes a little bit. And working on some of the other proportions here that are really sticking out to me. Maybe a little bit too much cheek volume. Let me turn off local sim as well. And maybe just like a little bit more volume down here. We're starting to get a little bit of a concave dip there in the silhouette. Alright, we will mess with the rest of the proportions in our next stream. And maybe in a little bit after we do our eyelids. Let's do our eyelids. So if you created your, or I'm sorry, our eyelashes, not our eyelids. If you created your eyelids like I did here, then what's great is that we can just duplicate and repurpose them for our eyelashes. If you did not create them this way, you want to either use a curved tube snap brush or my curved tube brush that is available on my Gumroad for I think $1. I believe it's $1. Yes, you can get 4 of my custom curve brushes for $1 here, and it includes my curved tube brush, which is how I made the eyelids for this character. It's also what we're going to use to make our eyelashes. So I am going to duplicate my eyelid and hide and delete everything except for this front-facing plane. So I will deselect everything on this side and just delete hidden. Turn on double, and now we can start making our eyelash. What I will do is continue to shape this, and then once I get it to a point where I'm happy with it, then I will add some thickness to it. I think it's just easier to work on the flat plane during this stage and not get too caught up in everything else. Alright, so again, focusing on thick to thin, so a little bit more thin on this side, and then as we go on to the outside, thicken it up a bit, and let's add in some thickness. Just a little bit. Let me flip that as well. And we will also crease this corner edge. And we can start shaping that up even more. So let's bring this inner corner here, just like that. Julie's art, what's going on? How you doing? And I'll bring in both of those a little bit. Ooh, let's pull them back out. Just get a nice shape here. And maybe flip up this outer corner a little bit. Make this a little bit more visually interesting with some twist. Doing pretty good. That's awesome. I am doing excellent. Always good when I'm getting some ZBrush sculpting done. As long as I'm in ZBrush, I'm happy. And then what I like to do for this is just apply like a black flat color to it. You can use a variety of different materials. The Skin Shade 4 by default is a pretty good one. And then you can start adding more colors to everything else, but this is just kind of a basic start. I like to make my eyelashes, eyebrows, and everything else nice and dark, just to get a more graphic style there. We can also do some eyebrows really fast, since I mentioned it. It's actually going to be the same process for our eyelids and lashes and all that, but we will have to redraw them out because we don't currently have them in place. So let's do that really quick. On our head, we will duplicate it and delete our subdivs so we don't have to worry about our error here. If you got subdivs, it'll say, hey, freeze or delete those. So we will delete them, and then we will draw out our curved tube for our eyebrow. And I'll just draw a really simple curve up here. And they're a little thick, so to make those a little bit more thin, I will lower my Z intensity. You can do this with any curve brush, by the way, and it will squash it down. All right, and maybe we'll like pull up on the shape a little bit. Maybe we'll do what we did earlier with the size modifier under stroke. And just click and drag on these and get a little, get a little bit of taper to that outer corner, something like that. Click to accept, delete hidden, and we have the start of some eyebrows that we can start moving around and shaping up on our face. And once you start getting in a lot of this stuff, it'll really help you figure out what you want to do with the rest of your face. So even just eyelashes alone really help add a lot of expression to your eyes. And you could put that in and say, ooh, you know what? I'm starting to notice that I think I do want to pull up on this inner corner a little bit more. And you can work on all this at the same time. I mean, It's really up to you, but getting in a lot of those extra pieces of geometry really help you to see where some of those mistakes are. Let's just continue shaping up our brow since we just put this in here. Let's see. What do we want to do here? I'll just use my move brush here. Turn on polyframe so we can see these yellow pins. These yellow pins are where your geometry actually is while you're doing this. And let's kind of push and pull some stuff around. I think I'll also maybe do like a quick inflate on this. Actually, here, let's change the color on those. Let's do a quick dark material so we can see how it frames the face. And there are a variety of different shapes that you can use for your eyebrows. Really, I'm just trying to create something, find something that I like here. How was your New Year's? My New Year's was fantastic. Thank you for asking. Going to start working on some personal stuff again now that you are done with work for the moment. Well, that sounds like fun. I love working on some personal stuff. What kind of personal stuff we talking? We gonna be working on some characters? Characters are the best. All the cool kids work on characters. I think I'm gonna work on this line here a little bit more. This comes up through here. Just try to get a little bit more volume so that when I start to smooth that out, it doesn't completely vanish. I think we're pretty close to the shape that I want. Let's see. I'm just feeling a little bit too surprised, so let's pull down on those, that ridge of the eyebrow, and just get this a little bit more neutral. Whoops, wanted to select that top lid. And let's see, let's like push back a little bit here just so we can see this lid a little bit better. Essentially, we would want to merge these lids into our face once we get to a good shape. You can also, you know, I would be totally fine with merging these into my head right now. I just haven't done it because then I would lose my subdivs, and there's still some other changes that I want to make here to like the lips and nose and everything else. So, you know, maybe you want to work on all that individually. But we've looked at merging geometry together for a bunch of different stuff, so at this point you guys should know how to do that if you've been following along. If not, you simply go to your merge down, and make sure you have your subtools in the correct order, and then dynamesh them together. Have an environment scene with a robot character. That sounds fun. Need to finish texturing. Updated your old Dragon ZBrush sculpt, and I also need to go back and update another character sculpt, which is a pirate robot. Lots of robots in Julie's world. Love me some robots. Maybe that can be something that I work on next. Some kind of hard surface robot character. Oh no, when was the last time? Other than the last clock. I made an alarm clock here on stream for a hard surface tutorial, which is now on my YouTube channel if you guys want to check that out. That was like the first hard surface thing I'd done in a while in terms of like something that's a little bit more complex in its shape and form. A robot or a mech, that would be even more complex. That would be a lot of fun though. Let's take a look at this nose. I feel like the nostrils are a little bit too long / deep. So let's just adjust this a little bit. From your profile, typically you can see that bridge of your nose. On a stylized character, you know, there's so many different shapes that could appear for a nose, so really it's up to your discretion or the discretion of the character that you are trying to replicate. A little bit more pinching around some of these areas. She doesn't really have a super tight transition here. I think that would actually look kind of bad, so I'm thinking about keeping that a little bit more flat. Let's play around and try to just add a little bit more visual complexity to this shape of this nose. Just a wee bit. You really like props and environment? Yeah, that's awesome. So do I. But characters. Characters take the cake. I just like kind of sculpting in general. Allows you to do organic and hard surface. That is true. And it allows you to practice characters, yes. I really like the shapes of robots. I guess it depends on the robot. But it sounds like you enjoy doing some hard surface stuff for some robots. That is awesome. What kind of robots we talking about? Do we have any screenshots? As always, people can feel free to share screenshots of whatever they're working on. Even if it's not something 3D related. Feel free to share any images or anything that you guys have going on. Check it out. We shall check it out on stream. And then I'll mention that this Friday we are doing another live critique stream. This Friday at noon EST. So come hang out on that time if you guys want to get in on that. It'll be a lot of fun. We just did one last Friday, and I think we looked at three different sculpts. 3 or 4. Alright. So, we have been kind of pushing a little bit closer to an appealing face over time. I don't think we're quite there yet. We'll be doing more of that tomorrow, but just to show you some of the... Let's see how far back we can go. Show you some of the undos here. Ooh, don't crash on us. I don't think I can go all the way back to the sphere because we had a crash earlier, which is fine. But we started off just working on the basic shapes of the head. Really simple, started from a sphere, used the move brush, just kind of planed out different areas of the face. Again, this will be up on my YouTube channel tomorrow if you guys want to watch it from the beginning. And then a lot of what we did was just kind of working on individual facial features. So starting with the eyes, or I think we started with the nose, then the eyes, ears, and lips were one of the last ones that we put in there, just because that involves splitting up the face and doing some more stuff there. But as you can see, here are some more changes over time, kind of pushing a little bit closer to a stylized appeal, trying to get a little bit more of a sharper chin, and here's where we are currently. So we will continue to do some of that on tomorrow's stream. I'll also be streaming tomorrow on the Pixelogic ZBrush channel. If you guys want to come and hang out, that'll be at 6 p.m. EST, Eastern US time zone. And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I think I'll noodle on this for a little bit longer and answer any additional questions that we got here on the stream before we bounce out. Really fun to watch. Hardly do human figures. Yeah. Let's see. We got a robot from Julie. I'm hoping it's a robot. We got an ArtStation link. This is not a robot. This is a dragon, Julie. You lied to me. Maybe there's a robot down here somewhere. I like this dragon. He's a lot of fun. I like his nose. That's cool. Do we got any robots? I'm not seeing any oh, there we go. There's a robot, pirate robot. That I think you said that you're still working on, maybe. He's fun. I like this robot. He's cool. You have very interesting jobs. Could you give some advice on my portfolio? Maybe some work should be removed from it, or what should be pumped up from skills. Gremlin, if you want to get some stuff critiqued, we are doing, as I just mentioned, a critique stream on Friday. So if you have anything that you want to send me, you can send that. Email me, type in !critique into chat, and there will be the instructions for how you can send me some stuff. And again, it will be this Friday at noon EST, but I would be happy to take a look. Looks good, yes. I loved your little robot and dragon boy. And then Gremlin. Gremlin, we got a link here, I think, to just your portfolio. We got some cool stuff from Gremlin as well. We got a trebuchet or catapult, and a raccoon, and maybe a jetpack? Maybe a jetpack. Got some other cool environmenty stuff, some battleships and whatnot. Very cool, Alexander. I like. Got some fun stuff. But yeah, feel free if anybody else wants to share some links in chat. It doesn't have to be, like I said, artistic related. Maybe you're working on some dope spreadsheets. I don't know. Share your dope spreadsheet. Whoever has the dopest spreadsheet wins. No cheating. No Googling spreadsheet images. I know how you guys are. Why can I not grab my rotation tool? Jeez. Wanted to just widen out that jaw a little bit. I think that was maybe even too much. I'll take that back. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any additional questions here while we noodled. But yeah, I think that's kind of a good place for us to stop today. We started with, like I said, blocking out the face, and then did more of the facial features. We even just threw in a quick couple things for the neck and what could become the body later. The reason we threw this quick geometry in here was because I recommend that it's easier to figure out, I think, for me, I think for a lot of people, figure out proportions and everything else. If you are not just working on a floating head by itself, it's often a lot easier if you got some other stuff in there too. So definitely make sure you got at least a neck in there, if nothing else. And we will look at doing some more on this face during our stream tomorrow, which again will be at noon EST on my channel and 6 p.m. EST on the Pixelogic ZBrush channel. I will also mention that I have, at least for a little while here, I am not going to be streaming on Mondays or Saturdays anymore, which is why the Saturday critique sessions are moving to Friday now. So I just have a lot of other stuff that I need to work on, and don't have the time any longer to stream on Mondays and Saturdays. So those are the 2 days that we are removing from the lineup. Normally I would stream every day of the week if I could, but I just simply cannot. Julie's Art says, thanks, other robot is not up yet. Well, get on it. I want to see this robot boy or girl. Gremlin says thanks, and Adochima says, how long do you stream? Well, we're actually bouncing off right now. We're at about 3 hours. I typically stream for about like 3, 4, 5 hours. I don't know. It just kind of depends on the day and how much other stuff I gotta get done. We got another imager link here by another. This is by Julie again. Another robot. He's fun. Is he watering a giant egg? Please tell me that this is an egg. It looks like an egg to me. That's pretty fun. I like his neck a lot. That's cool. He's a fun little robot. Gardener robot. Awesome. Well, I think with that, that's going to be all for today's stream. I will mention again my Gumroad. There is a link down below, some stuff on here for tutorials, brushes, materials, all the brushes, materials, and UI and stuff that I use here professionally for my work. But yeah, check it out. And there's links to other stuff down below. But other than that, you guys have a great rest of your day, and I hope to either see you tomorrow on my channel or on the Pixelogic ZBrush channel. You guys have a great day. Toodaloo. Goodbye. Toodaloo, goodbye. We'll come up with a better send-off for our streams. But yes, Zofo, Injin, Arrow, Julie, Nuclear Dan, Zofo, you guys are all so nice. All right, see you guys.